Good and fair evening, my friends. Welcome back to the tavern. Matty, thank you for the raid. I'm gonna get you toot on the raid horn here in just a second. We'll get you some Viking raspberries. Hex, it's so good to see you, my friend. It's been a while. Hope that you're doing well. Erin, hello, love. Good to see you. Marina, welcome in. It is good to see you all, my friends. Welcome back to the tavern. Let's get Matty a toot on the raid horn. Good, Matty. Glad to hear it. Progress is always a wonderful thing. But hello and welcome in, my friends. It is a momentous occasion. We are about to finish out, for the first time, the Harry Potter series. This will be the first time I have ever opened Book 7. This will be my first read-through of it. I'm doing it with all of you. And this will be the very first time I have completed the entire series. Champion, Matty. It's honestly good to be back. I've been quite an eventful past few months. But I've been doing okay. I hope you're doing well also. We're doing well. The lady and I have been working a lot, but it's all good things. We enjoy what we do. And it's very, very exciting times for us as far as what it is we're getting to work on, and we're thrilled about all of those things. Last chapter was a huge focus on Auntie Riri and Sunrael. I look forward to seeing what you did, Matty. I'll join in about half an hour. I just started watching the first episode of Steve Burns' podcast Alive. The second episode comes out next Wednesday on my birthday. A birthday coming up, you say? Well, we'll have to sing in celebration then. And we'll see you when you get back, Bethany. So, I have never read Book 7 of Harry Potter. Jessica, hello, love, welcome in. Happy Friday Eve to you as well. I hope that you're thriving, getting ready to go into the weekend. The lady and I don't ever focus on the weekend because we work for ourselves. So we don't really have weekends. And most of my family, we don't really do weekends or birthdays or holidays. We have festivals, but we don't really take off for the festivals. So it's an odd thing. Anuna may have convinced me to get a few games too. She's good at that. She's very persuasive. Take it from the man who lives with her. She's very persuasive. If she wants something, she gets it. Yeah, it's kind of an odd thing because a lot of people invest all of their happiness into the weekend, and every day is the same for us. I don't really see it as a negative because she and I, we celebrate each other every day. We celebrate our son every day. We celebrate our victories every day. So we don't put a whole lot of investment into waiting for happiness and celebration. We just kind of do it, and it also means that if we have all of our work done at any point, we can go do something. Now we don't usually do that because we're kind of workaholics, but if at any point we say we want to go out and have a family lunch or a family dinner, we go and we do that. If we want to go for a walk, we want to stop what we're doing and go for a walk, we do that. If we want to spend time with family or spend time with friends, we'll call them up and we'll go and we'll do that. Marissa, love, I thought I saw you drop in. There she is. Hello, love. Good to see you. They changed the subscription to Superfan, so now anytime someone who has a Superfan subscription, it tells me at the top Superfan joined. That's very interesting. But it didn't have to do much to convince me. Quirt, hello, my friend. Good to see you. Welcome in. I'm a writerholic. Well, if you're planning on being a writer, then that's the thing to do. Perry Potter, the boy who skewed. Could be, could be. How's it going, Wesley? That lifestyle is the goal, and we are very very happy that we're able to do it. Now, don't get me wrong, we don't live lavishly. We've sacrificed quite a bit to be able to do what we do, and we love it. But it is a happier way of living, I think, to not have the stresses. Now, and when I say we can go and do whatever, we don't go and do whatever we want. But whenever we want to do something, we have the means to do. We can go and do it. We don't have to wait and ponder and uh, weigh the pros and cons of saying going to see family. Um, I mentioned this on Tuesday that we had a family memorial on Tuesday, and I was able to push off story time for a couple of hours so we could go spend time with family. And obviously every passing is a tragedy, but fortunately this was more of a happy passing. She was Una's great great grandmother, and she was in her late 90s, surrounded by people she loved all the way up to the last minute, and then her wake was her surrounded by people who loved her. So it was a beautiful thing, and we were able to go and spend time with family and celebrate a life that had been well lived and was now past. Belinda, hello and good evening, welcome in. Gellert Grindelwald and the Deathly Hollows. Alright, my friends, I think I have given everyone apt time to join us. So we are going to begin. Again, this is the first time that I have ever read the seventh book. I gave up after the sixth book. I really stopped enjoying the writing in the fifth book. I felt like there was a sort of a disconnect of passion in the sixth book. I felt like it was being written because it had to be written, not because there was a passion for the story anymore. Which, when you have to write a 7-book series with as many pages as Harry Potter's had, it's not an unusual prospect for somebody to have lost passion for that sort of thing. Yay, Storytime, Beauty and Blasphemy, hello, welcome in. A passing hog, great great grandma, that's a long life, yeah. To be fair, I felt like the fifth one was the lamest in my opinion, took me ages to grow on me. I know a lot of people like the Order of the Phoenix. I think the Order of the Phoenix has a lot of issues, but I also think it has a lot. There are some merits to it. Killing off Sirius was definitely a bold choice, and the follow through is commendable. Does whatever I want. Cops show up at my door. Sir, you drove a car without a license. Yay, jail party. You don't want to go to a jail party, Matty. Those are not fun parties. But when you look at the difference between how the first, second, and third books were written, and the fourth book even, how those were all written, like there's a certain amount of passion for the characters. And then by book 5, and most definitely in book 6, there's this sort of apathy towards the characters in the way that the language is written, and just the overall execution of it. It feels like there's an apathy towards the characters, and it's what lost me. It's why I never read the seventh book. Good lord, cannot make it 5 minutes. I'm convinced that everybody who watches anything over on Kick is just a bot. Every day. Alright. Okay. I really wish she'd just hired a better author to write the books and fed them ideas. There is something to be said about that. Also, I have my cell on standby. Sister is distraught. Her cat has passed away. I see. Well, again, it is a privilege to be around the ones that we love as they go. I agree. I feel like the passion ebbed after the fourth book, and they got sadder. In my opinion, they did. And again, I commend someone to being able to write proper tragedy. Now, I don't feel like the tragedies are handled very well in the book. There's a lot of like anger and angst around them, and I don't feel like it was the best way that they could have been written. And I have never been a fan of Rowling's style because she's just not a very good writer. It's very redundant. It's very derivative, but the world is good. She wrote a really beautiful wrote a very beautiful world, and a lot of the characters are really good characters. So I think now the seventh is where I was annoyed. Missed opportunities, no. Like the sixth, yeah, I would agree with that, Wesley. Harry starts becoming very sad and angry in the fifth and sixth books due to the losses. Right. I also think Harry had to raise himself in a way. Uh, I mean, I like the sixth more. Yeah, and again, I wouldn't know. I haven't read the seventh, so without proper guidance, you might react angrily to what you go through as a teen. I do agree with that. She has a great imagination and did what she could with it. Yeah, and again, I think that when you have an inexperienced author, that these things are bound to happen. Um, Frost, hello, my friend. Hello, hello. I'm glad you made it in. Um, my only issue is that she goes through great pains to make Harry very sympathetic to the plights of other people. She goes through great pains to make it so that he doesn't want to treat anybody the way that his aunt and uncle treat him. And then he just sort of very blindly does that without any sort of self awareness at all or growth in the matter. And that's probably the most irritating thing about the Harry Potter series for me, is that she goes through great pains to make him very aware of like the suffering of others, like in the case of Dobby and several other characters, and to have him be somebody who just doesn't want to uh, see that kind of suffering put onto other people, and then he goes and he treats his friends terribly whenever he's upset. And there is some realism to that, but I feel like it could have been handled with a little bit more nuance because it feels contrived. Like Harry Potter as a character feels very contrived in a lot of ways. I think the world she built is wonderful, and really that's what matters. Right, and I do agree. I think that the Harry Potter world is iconic. There's a lot of really incredible things in it, and in spite of Rowling's lack of ability as a writer, it's become iconic. So it should prove to you that if you've got a story you want to tell it with a lot of passion, and it could become the next thing that people love throughout all of their life. I love the books. I consumed it as a child, and so it was fitting that as an adult I see the issues, but my nostalgia for it outweighs it. By the time I got to Harry Potter, I was so nitpicky with my literature. Now don't get me wrong, I still wept at the death of Dumbledore and I almost wept when we were reading it here. Um, it's still impactful because the characters are very alive. Uh, right. And again, like you are correct, Jessica. Those are things that really do happen with people who go through those things. The way that it's handled in the book, I just felt like didn't have enough nuance for a main character. Like if he were a side character, and this is what we were getting, it would feel more real. If we were just getting these little tidbits of it, it would feel more real. But the fact that we got so little nuance from how the main character, whose head was supposed to be inside, as the story goes along. It didn't feel as nuanced as it should have. Hell, I get more mad at Ron's. Yeah, well, but Ron's character is consistent throughout everything, though. Jonas Mears. I do indeed. Jonas, my wife and I both do. I am a classically trained storyteller. My uh, I've spent a long time studying stories, and I come from a family of classically trained storytellers who keep and pass on myth and lore and tales of yore. My mouth isn't working tonight. Um, my wife and I are actually finishing up a couple of our first books to be published. Now, again, I've never been published, so I'll make that very clear. I don't have a multi-billion-dollar book franchise, so you can take my words as light or as heavily as you like. Um, this is based purely off of uh, experience and uh, note of art, note of craft. Ron is an offender too, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Ron's character is consistent. He's always jealous. He's always envious of others around him. So what the frustrating thing about Ron is that he has very little character growth throughout the books, but he's consistent. He is consistent throughout all of the books with what his problem is. Uh, well, Ron loses points in 7 with me because he already did this in 4. Even if I get it, yeah, and there's love it. I can relate to your sentiments. Well, welcome in, Jonas. Again, I am Castle. This is my tavern, and here we talk about myth and lore and tales of yore. And every now and again, I read you all a bedtime story. You've stumbled through a door into a tavern at the end of the world, where all stories eventually come to rest. So, fill your tankard, grab a seat, and join us if you will. We're about to begin, and again, I have never read the 7th book. This will be my first time ever opening it, ever seeing this first page. This is the only book in the series I have not read. So I will be experiencing this for the first time with all of you. Ron had to learn the lesson on a deeper level. It was a cursed item. Spoilers. I don't actually care about spoilers, I'm just teasing. Glug, 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 glug. Alright, Frost, take your time. Kristalla, hello, you made it in just in time. I'm just getting ready to start. I want to stay for the first time, but I have to go. No! You're fleeing from the tavern. It's alright, love. What do you have going on? I presume family and children things. Glad to experience it with you. I'm glad to experience it with all of you too. Cindy, hello, good to see you. Welcome in. Alright. The ghost of Vincent Price also joins us this evening. Promise Mom I spend time with her and she's catching it in now. The dread. That's alright. Family is important. You have to do the things. Alright, kids. Let's go ahead. Let me see, what am I doing wrong here? Yeah, okay, that's better. Fair enough. In my book, Big Battle Happens, Breed, you know we'll have to clean this up, right? Chapter 1. The Dark Lord Ascending. The two men appeared out of nowhere a few yards apart in the narrow moonlit lane. For a second, they stood quite still, wands directed at each other's chests. Then, recognizing each other, they stowed their wands beneath their cloaks and started walking briskly in the same direction. "Those?" asked the taller of the two. "The best," replied Severus Snape. The lane was bordered on the left by wild, low-growing brambles, on the right by a high, neatly manicured hedge. The men's long cloaks flapped around their ankles as they marched. "I thought I might be late," said Yaxley, his blunt features sliding in and out of sight as the branches and overhanging trees broke the moonlight. "Was a little trickier than I expected, but I hope he will be satisfied. You sound confident that your reception will be good." Snake nodded, but did not elaborate. They turned right into a wide driveway that led off the lane. The high hedge curved with them, running off into the distance beyond the pair of impressive wrought iron gates barring the men's way. Neither of them broke step. In silence, both raised their left arms in a kind of salute and passed straight through, as though the dark metal were smoke. "Marina, thank you kindly, love. Tips to the tavern keeper are always appreciated." What did you get? Did it actually pop? Hang on. Let me do it again. There you go. Enjoy your eggs of a starter. Oh, this is the last month that those will be up. Ads in 4. Oh, I should have ran the ads while we were waffling. Damn it. Alright, hang on, we're gonna do that now. I'd multitask if I could, but we're watching a Korean horror show and it's only subbed. That would make it quite difficult to multitask. Destiny love, hello. No, it's alright. You're not dreadfully late. We've just begun. I am 4 paragraphs in on the first page. And now we have to wait a few minutes because the Twitch needs the ads to finish. So do not fret. You're perfectly on time. Fate hath come. Kayla, hello. People are seriously testing my patient today, at least at work. Well, just don't fail the test. Harry Potter Book 7 also had this odd poem in the start of it. Find books that do that is weird, hello. Really? Is there a... Oh, there is. So the start of it says, "Oh, the torment, bred in the race, the grinding scream of death. And the stroke that hits the vein, the hemorrhage none can staunch the grief, the curse no man can bear. But there is a cure in the house, and not outside it, no. Not from others, but from them, their bloody strife. We sing to you, dark gods beneath the earth. Now hear you, blissful powers underground, answer the call, send help. Bless the children, give them triumph now. Ashaelus, the libation bearers. Death is but crossing the world, as friends do the sea. They live in one another still. For they must needs be present, that love and live in that which is omnipresent. In this divine glass they see face to face, and the converse is free, as well as pure. This is the comfort of friends, that though they be said to die, yet their friendship and society are in the best sense, ever present, because immortal. William Penn, More Fruits of Solitude. Yeah. There are a lot of authors that will do that. They'll put old poems into their work. Now please lease and exit with your complaint unanswered. I had to get 2 supervisors for 1 client. Like, bro, you're not gonna get a different answer. Noah, hello. Thank you for the lightning bolts. Tips to the Tavern Keeper are always appreciated. Thank you kindly. Benny, hello. Greetings, friends around for the tavern. At your command, friend. Thank you kindly. Darth Nexus Big 8 joins us. Thank you for the Go Popular and for the hard knee. Deeply appreciated. Dr. Susan, good to see you. Thank you for the likes. Welcome in. And Marina, again, thank you so much for the bits over on Twitch. Your generosity is deeply appreciated. The lady and I are very thankful. Alright, it looks like ads are done over on Twitch. Let us continue. Good evening, Dr. Susan. It's so good to see you. Alright. So they just passed through the dark metal gate. This is Snape and Yaxley. The yew hedges muffled the sound of the men's footsteps. There was a rustle somewhere to their right. Yaxley drew his wand again, pointing it over his companion's head. But the source of the noise proved to be nothing more than a pure white peacock, strutting majestically along the top of the hedge. He always did himself well, Lucius. Peacocks. He actually thrust his wand back into his cloak with a snort. A handsome manor grew out of the darkness. At the end of the straight drive, lights glinting in the diamond pane downstairs windows. Somewhere in the dark garden beyond the hedge, a fountain was playing. Gravel crackled beneath their feet as Snape and Yaxley sped towards the front door, which swung inward at their approach, though nobody had visibly opened it. The hallway was large and dimly lit, and sumptuously decorated. With magnificent carpet covering most of the stone floor, the eyes of the pale-faced portraits on the wall followed Snape and Yaxley as they strode past. The two men halted at a heavy wooden door, leading to the next room. Hesitated for the space of a heartbeat. Then Snape turned the bronze handle. The drawing room was full of silent people, sitting at a long and ornate table. The room's usual furniture had been pushed carelessly up against the walls. Illumination came from a roaring fire beneath a handsome marble mantelpiece, surmounted by a gilded mirror. Snape and Yaxley lingered for a moment on the threshold. Their eyes grew accustomed to the lack of light. They were drawn upward to the strangest feature of the scene, an apparently unconscious human figure hanging upside down over the table, revolving slowly as if suspended by an invisible rope. And reflected in the mirror and in bare, polished surface of the table below. None of the people seated underneath this singular sight was looking at it, except for a pale young man sitting almost directly below it. He seemed unable to prevent himself from glancing upward every minute or so. Yaxley! Snape! Said a high, clear voice from the head of the table. You are very nearly late. The speaker seated directly in front of the fireplace, so that it would be difficult at first for the new arrivals to make out more than his silhouette. As they drew nearer, however, his face shone through the gloom, hairless and snake-like, with slits for nostrils and gleaming red eyes whose pupils were vertical. He was so pale that he seemed to emit a pearly glow. Severus! Here! Said Voldemort, indicating the seat on his immediate right. Yaxley! Beside Dolohov! The two men took their allotted places. Most of the eyes round the table followed Snape. and so it was to him that Voldemort spoke first.
So,
My lord, the Order of the Phoenix intends to move Harry Potter from his current place of safety on Saturday next at nightfall. The interest around the table sharpened palpably. Some stiffened, others fidgeted, all gazing at Snape and Voldemort.
Saturday at nightfall,
Repeated Voldemort, his red eyes fastened upon Snape's black ones, with such intensity that some of the watchers looked away, apparently fearful that they themselves would be scorched by the ferocity of the gaze. Snape, however, looked calmly back into Voldemort's face, and, after a moment or two, Voldemort's lipless mouth curved into something like a smile.
good, very good. When this information comes
From the source we discussed, said Snape. My lord, Yaxley had leaned forward to look down the very long table at Voldemort and Snape, but all faces turned to him. My lord, I have heard differently. Yaxley waited, but Voldemort did not speak, so he went on. Dawlish, the Order, let slip that Potter will not be moved until the 30th, the night before the boy turns 17. Snape was smiling. My source told me that there are plans to lay a false trail. This must be it. No doubt my Confundus charm has been placed on Dawlish. It would not be the first time he is known to be susceptible. I assure you, my lord, Dawlish seemed quite certain, said Yaxley. If he has been confounded, naturally he is certain, said Snape. I assure you, Yaxley, the Order office will play no further part in the protection of Harry Potter. The Order believes that we have infiltrated the Ministry.
the Order's got one thing right then, eh?
Said a squat man sitting a short distance from Yaxley. He gave a wheezy giggle that was echoed here and there along the table. Okay, I haven't missed anything, it doesn't seem like. Skello Gamer, hello, it has been a while. I'm glad that you made it in. Grab a seat. Pull up a chair and fill your mug, my friend. It has been too long. I'm always boisterous. It's your MO, Erin. You're a party animal. Alright. Where was I? Voldemort did not laugh. His gaze wandered upward to the body slowly revolving overhead, and he seemed to be lost in thought. My lord, he actually went on, Dawlish believes an entire party of auras will be used to transfer the boy. Voldemort held up a large hand, and he actually subsided at once, watching resentfully as Voldemort turned back to Snape.
Where are they going to hide the boy next?
At the home of one of the Order, said Snape. The place, according to the source, has been given every protection that the Order and Ministry together could provide. I think that there is little chance of taking him once he is there, my lord. Unless, of course, the Ministry has fallen before next Saturday, which might give us the opportunity to discover and undo enough of the enchantments to break through the rest.
Well, Yaxley,
Voldemort called down the table, the firelight glinting dangerously in his red eyes.
will the ministry have fallen by next Saturday?
Once again, all heads turned. Yaxley squared his shoulders. My lord, I have good news on that score. I have, with difficulty and great effort, succeeded in placing an imperious curse on pious thickness. Many of those sitting around Yaxley look impressed. His neighbor, Dolohov, a man with a long, twisted face, clapped him on the back.
It is a start,
said Voldemort.
Thickness is only one man. Scrimgeour must be surrounded by our people before I act. One failed attempt on the minister's life will set me a long way back.
Yes, my lord, that is true. But you know, as head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Thickness has regular contact not only with the minister himself, but also with all the heads of the ministry departments. It will, I think, be easy, now that we have such a high-ranking official under our control, to subjugate the others, and then they can all work together to bring Scrimgeour down.
As long as our friend Thickness is not discovered before he has converted the rest,
said Voldemort.
At any rate, it remains unlikely that the ministry will be mine before Saturday. If we cannot touch the boy at his destination, then it must be done while he travels.
We are at an advantage here, my lord, said Yaxley, who seemed determined to receive some portion of approval. We now have several people planted within the Department of Magical Transport. Potter operates or uses the flu network. We shall know immediately. He will not do either, said Snape. The order is eschewing any form of transport that is controlled or regulated by the ministry. They mistrust everything to do with the place.
All the better,
said Voldemort.
He will have to move in the open. He is here to take, by far.
Again, Voldemort looked up at the slowly revolving body as he went on.
I shall attend to the boy in person. There have been too many mistakes where Harry Potter is concerned. Some of them have been my own. That Potter lives is due more to my errors than to his triumphs.
The company around the table watched Voldemort apprehensively, each of them, by his odd expression, afraid that there might be blame for Harry Potter's continued existence. Voldemort, however, seemed to be speaking more to himself than to any of them, still addressing the unconscious body above him. I found chat over here. I'm on a computer now instead of my PlayStation. Ah, okay. That's all right, Bethany. I'm glad you joined us. Bear, hello, my friends. Is it Mary Beth's birthday? Well, happy birthday, Mary Beth. I didn't see if she dropped in, but a very happy birthday to her. Nate, hello. Welcome in, my friend. Grab your seat, fill your mug, and thank you for the tip. Heart me. Tips to the tavern keeper are always appreciated, my friend. All right. So to make sure I haven't missed anyone, friends, give me just a moment. Alright, it seems like we're all good. I did not, Belinda. What did you say over on Twitch? And also hello over on Twitch. Last time I was here, I asked for a butterbeer. Was it over on Twitch or over on TikTok? Cindy, thank you for the follow. For some reason, I thought you were already following, Cindy. I guess I missed. What did I miss, Belinda? Thank you. I'm 60 years young today. Wonderful. Actually, when you look at Harry's behavior with his friends from a psychological perspective, it makes sense that he would have outbursts with him. He was raised in an abusive environment with no prior friends. Ron and Hermione were the first safe people whom he could freely express his feelings around, his frustration and anger without repercussion. I agree with you on that point. How he acts afterwards, the lack of remorse, is what I feel needs more nuance. I feel like the way that he is written, when these things happen, TikTok is a glitchy bastard. Yeah, that's completely understandable, Belinda. I feel like that part could have used a little bit of work, but you are correct. I agree with that aspect. But the way that he deals with it afterwards, he sort of has this almost an utter lack of remorse for the way that he treats his friends. We get to the occasional sentence where he felt bad, but we don't see that portrayed. It's more of a tell rather than show aspect. So I do agree with you that the way that he responds is indicative of what he has seen his whole life. It's Mary Beth's birthday over on the Facebook portal. You're getting happy birthdays from across from across the tavern portals, Mary Beth. 60 years young. What a privilege and pleasure. Welcome to YouTube, where there doesn't seem to be much chatting over here, but I like this platform. Seems more stable on my phone. Yeah, the wild chats tend to be Twitch and TikTok. Those are the ones that tend to get away from us. I'm sorry to hear that, Cindy. That's dreadful. But what a long life to have lived. 97 years old. Cindy lost a grandfather. So we'll raise a glass to Cindy's grandfather who was lost. We'll raise a glass to Mary Beth, who has made it another revolution around the sun. And we'll raise a glass to Destiny's sister, who is getting married in 2 weeks. Glasses to the celebrations of the many stages of life. I'm sorry to hear about your grandfather, but what a wonderful and long life the man lived. And what a pleasure to have known someone to have made it through such a long amount of time. Crystal, hello, welcome in. They say that the Dursleys hated Harry because he was a Horcrux. That's entirely possible. I found you on TikTok first, and it was busy there. Yeah, TikTok does tend to get a little bit busier, and we nowhere near what it used to be. I actually do prefer that we stick to like, because right now we've probably got about 40 to 60 people across all the portals. That's much more manageable. There was a time when we were getting 400, 500, 600 people in, and that's very hard to keep up with. It's very hard to keep up with. Happy birthday! I got snacks to celebrate. He was the last of his family of 16 children. Oh, good lord. My grandfather is a little over 100 years old, and him and my grandmother had 17 children together. Dr. Susan, thank you for the heart me. I appreciate you. It's much easier on our barkeeps' feet. Yes, the barkeeps do not have quite as much work to do when there are so many people. Never bought that theory much because of their actions towards the other wizard. Yeah, that's fair, Wesley. Dr. Susan, thank you for the roses as well. You guys are all being far too generous. I appreciate you. Yeah, I do prefer when we have like this sort of like 40 to 80 people range across platforms is manageable. When we were getting into the hundreds and close to the 1,000 point, that was a bit much. I won't smudge people enjoying coming in here, but it is difficult to keep up with so many people. I don't know how large streamers who have 40, 50, 60,000 people who watch them all at the same time. I don't know how they do it. And to be fair, they probably don't. But I like to have the conversation with everybody and to have us all sort of be like we are like you're all joining me here in the tavern, and I can chat with all of you. We can discuss the varying views. There's right views, there's wrong views, there's good views, there's bad views. But the fun thing is when we get to talk about all of it. I don't ever think it's bad if somebody has a terrible opinion or terrible perspective on anything. I don't think that that's something that is bad. I actually like to speak to people who have just wild opinions about books. I had somebody who said something about Lord of the Rings. They said that it was a wildly boring slog of little people walking, and I was like, this is a hilariously bad take from somebody who is severely lacking in reading comprehension. So then, for I think it was like a 30 comment thread, and I believe it was on Facebook. We went through and we talked about. I was talking about all of the different nuances of the story, all of the things that could be revealed from the lore and the other things, uh, and it was a hilarious conversation. So I will tease people who have bad opinions, but I welcome them anyway. And if you don't have thick skin, you might not enjoy yourself in the tavern. But good or bad, I love to have conversations about everyone's perspective. That sounds overwhelming. I really enjoy the dynamics here. It's comforting to come here on a rough day and have some community. I agree, Kristalla. Yeah, this was back before we started doing the readings. So most of you joined after the readathon. Most of the folks who are regulars now joined after the readathon. When we were doing the lore streams, TikTok would get up to like two, three, 400 people sometimes. I think the highest we ever got was 500, and Facebook would get into the 30s and 40s, and Twitch would get into the. I think the highest we ever got on Twitch was 90 people all at once. It might have been a little bit more than that, but 90 people all at once. Uh, and it was a lot. It was a lot, especially since those were conversation forums where we were talking about writing and mythology and folklore and history. So it was a lot. Uh, and we did the readathon sort of as like a break where I wouldn't have to keep up with chat, and it. Lord of the Rings badly explained. Small people trying to return a ring to the jewelry store. Or during said yeah, during and after the readathon is when most of you who are regulars now came in. I love the personable feeling that we can all talk. It makes the experience. I agree, Beauty and Blasphemy. It's one of my favorite things, and I know it's such a strange thing to say. I'm glad that there are fewer people who are in here now. I really enjoy being able to talk to everybody who comes in. My most controversial Lord of the Ring takes is that the battles tend to go on too long. I know most men disagree with me on that. No, I would agree that. I guess I suppose it depends on whether or not whether you're talking about the movies or you're talking about the books. I think the books, the battles are an okay length. I think they're pretty well measured. Uh, but the films do spend a lot of time based on it. It's a funny coincidence. I have a box set of The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. My brother bought my daughter her own box set, so now we both have one. That's beautiful. The books. The books I don't feel like are as egregious in how much they focus on the fighting. Tolkien didn't really like to focus on the battles as much as he did the sort of aftermaths. But I do agree that in some areas, uh, Tolkien does tend to drag out details on things that he felt were important. And probably the longest drag was the discussion where Merry and Pippin are with Treebeard, and in the discussion with Treebeard, that section drags on for a very long time, and it's because Tolkien wanted to emphasize how long the Ents have been there, how long they have gone through, and it's important because the hobbits are sort of like the newest species in the newest species in Middle Earth, right? They're sort of like the youngest of all of the denizens of Middle Earth, whereas the Ents are some of the oldest. They were made by the elves speaking to them at the first march of the elves, and it's sort of like this beautiful contrast between some of the youngest and the oldest folks, and it's meant to be a contrast between the while the hobbits like to live a relaxed life, they also do things very quickly in contrast to the ents, who live a very slow life and they do things very slowly. So it does drag a lot. It is hard to read if you're not used to that sort of literature. And it's definitely not novel friendly, but it is a very Molly Sue, hello. Oh man, does that part drag out? It does. You talking to everyone is what kept me coming those early days. I was shocked to be addressed and then remembered. It's greatly appreciated. I do very much try to remember all of you. I do, because you're all very important to the lady and I, and we appreciate all of the love and support that you give us. It means the world to us. Let Grandpa tell you about the golden days. 15 minutes on a tree. It was probably more than 15 minutes, to be fair. I think there's probably a whole chapter that can be attributed to Merry and Pippin, and their maybe even more than that. Merry and Pippin and their growing relationship with Treebeard. Yeah, Cristale is normally over on TikTok, and recently has been joining us through, I believe, I might be wrong about that, but normally through TikTok, and has recently been joining through Twitch, and occasionally drops in over on YouTube. You're too kind, Belinda. I'm glad that you guys enjoy. Okay, let us continue, friends. Let's pick back up. Where was I? Bethany says hi, everyone on Twitch where I normally am. Alright, where were we? Oh, he was addressing the unconscious body.
I have been kept, and so have been thwarted by luck and chance. Those records of all but the best laid plans. But I know better now. I understand those things that I did not understand before. I must be the one to kill Harry Potter, and I shall be.
At these terrible words, seemingly in response to them, a sudden wail sounded, a terrible drawn-out cry of misery and pain. Many of those at the table looked downward, startled to see that the sound seemed to issue from below their feet.
"What tale?"
said Voldemort with no change in his quiet, thoughtful tone, and without removing his eyes from the revolving body above.
"Have I not spoken to you about keeping our prisoner quiet?"
Yes, my lord,"
gasped a small man halfway down the table, who had been sitting so low in his chair that it had appeared at first glance to be unoccupied. Now he scrambled from his seat and scurried from the room, leaving nothing behind him but a curious gleam of silver.
"As I was saying,"
continued Voldemort, looking down at the tense faces of his followers,
"I understand better now. I shall need, for instance, to borrow a wand from one of you before I kill Potter."
The faces around him displayed nothing but shock. He might have announced that he wanted to borrow one of their arms.
"No volunteers,"
said Voldemort.
"Let's see. Lucius, I see no reason for you to have a wand anymore."
Lucius Malfoy looked up. His skin appeared yellowish and waxy in the firelight, and his eyes were sunken and shadowed. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse.
My lord, your wand, Lucius. I require your wand.
Malfoy glanced sideways at his wife. She was staring straight ahead, quite as pale as he was, her long blonde hair clinging down to her back. But beneath the table, her slim fingers closed briefly on his wrist. At her touch, Malfoy put his hand into his robes and withdrew a wand and passed it along to Voldemort, who held it up in front of his red eyes, examining it closely.
What is it?
Elm, my lord, whispered Malfoy.
And the core.
Dragon heartstring,
Good.
said Voldemort. He drew out his own wand and compared the links. Lucius Malfoy made an involuntary movement, but a fraction of a second. He seemed to expect to receive Voldemort's wand in exchange for his own. The gesture was not missed by Voldemort, whose eyes widened maliciously.
Give you my wand, Lucius. My wand.
Some of the throng snickered.
I have given you your liberty, Lucius. Is that not enough for you? But I have noticed that your family seems less happy of late. What is it about my presence in your home that displeases you, Lucius?
Nothing, my lord.
Such lies, Lucius.
The soft voice seemed to hiss on even after the cruel mouth had stopped moving. One or two of the wizards barely repressed a shudder as the hissing grew louder. Something heavy could be heard sliding across the floor beneath the table. The huge snake emerged to climb slowly up Voldemort's chair. It rose seemingly endlessly and came to rest across Voldemort's shoulders, its neck the thickness of a man's thigh, its eyes with the vertical slits for pupils unblinking. Voldemort stroked the creature absently with long, thin fingers, still looking at Lucius Malfoy.
Why do the Malfoys look so unhappy with their lot? Is my return, my rise to power, not the very thing they profess to desire for so many years?
Of course, my lord, said Lucius Malfoy. His hand shook as he wiped the sweat from his upper lip. We did desire it. We do. To Malfoy's left, his wife made an odd, stiff nod, her eyes averted from Voldemort to the snake. To his right, his son, Draco, who had been gazing up at the inert body overhead, glanced quickly at Voldemort and then away again, terrified to make eye contact.
My lord!
Said a dark woman halfway down the table, her voice constricted with emotion.
It is an honor to have you here in our family's house. There can be no higher pleasure.
She sat beside her sister, as unlike in her looks, with her dark hair and heavy-lidded eyes, as she was in bearing and demeanor. When Narcissa sat rigid and impassive, Bellatrix leaned towards Voldemort, for mere words could not demonstrate her longing for closeness.
No higher pleasure,
repeated Voldemort, his head tilted a little to one side as he considered Bellatrix.
That means a great deal, Bellatrix. You.
Her face flooded with color, her eyes welled with tears of delight.
You know, my lord, I knows I speak nothing but the truth.
No high pleasure, even compared with a happy event that I hear has taken place in your family this week.
She stared at him. Her lips parted, evidently confused.
I don't know what you mean, my lord.
Talking about your niece, Bellatrix, and yours, Lucius and Narcissa. She has married the werewolf, Remus Lupin. You must be so proud.
There was an eruption of jeering laughter from around the table. Many leaned forward to exchange gleeful looks. A few thumped the table with their fists. The great snake, disliking the disturbance, opened its mouth wide and hissed angrily. But the Death Eaters did not hear it. So jubilant were they at Bellatrix and the Malfoys' humiliation. Bellatrix's face, so recently flushed with happiness, had turned an ugly, blotchy red. Unreciprocated interest. Yeah, yes. Stephanie, hello, welcome in. Dark Wolf, thank you for the follow over on TikTok. Welcome into the tavern, my friend. So very glad that you could join us. Jared Pyle, you said, glad I joined the tavern family all those years ago. Very happy that you found the tavern as well, my friend. Love the book readings. Cheers to that. You might have said something earlier. Tongs, hello, welcome in. Started coming here for the lore, stayed to be lulled to sleep. It's grand that the tavern can have multiple functions and features, yeah? Pam, hello, welcome in. So very glad that you could join us. Grab a seat. When else do you drop in on Facebook, Cristela, or is it just on TikTok? But I feel like I've seen you on one of the other platforms. I could be wrong though. Milu, hello! Milu is lurking for us, alright? Alright, I just want to make sure I haven't missed anyone, and it seems like we're all well. Have you or will you do a live book reading or lore session? How do you mean, Jared? Do you mean not like this, but in person? Like at a bookshop or something of the like? No, just TikTok in here. Why do I feel like I'd seen you somewhere on one of the other... Maybe I'm just so used to seeing you on TikTok, I'm seeing you everywhere. Milo is a sad panda and is half lurking. Well, I'm sorry that you are a sad panda, Milo. I know you're going through a lot with your family right now, so that's absolutely acceptable. Just don't stay a sad panda. It is your job to celebrate those who you keep in your heart. I'm sorry to hear that, Milo. That's the second of tragedies that we've heard today. Well, then a glass raised, and may your family know joy and peace and celebrate the life that has passed. Cheers. We do indeed adore you, Milo. In person, yes. We have considered it. We've actually talked about going to bookstores and libraries and maybe even taverns and pubs, traveling from here using the portals to go elsewhere and tell stories. To Nana, indeed. I've lost both my last remaining grandparents in a 1-week span, and I'm reading the Fiddler's Green poem. Overwhelming amount of loss over the last 2 weeks. It's important to remember that we who live are the keepers of those who have gone. It's our job to keep alive their songs and their stories and their names. And while it is always sad to lose those we love, it is a privilege and honor of the living to get to remember those who have passed. And especially in cases like with Milu, where many family members were surrounding those who were passed. It's just like Una lost her great-great-grandmother this 2 weeks ago and was surrounded by her children, 96 years old. It's never a joyous thing for someone to die. But it is a joyous thing when somebody gets to pass on from this life, surrounded by people that they love. There are few things more joyful than that. To live a long and beautiful life. And to be surrounded by those that love us all the way up to the end. Someday at a physical tavern, hopefully, or a festival someday. That is the plan. Once the tavern doors are open, I don't think I would be able to get away with not doing readings and storytelling every once in a while in the tavern. I think that there would be riots if we didn't. Well, and that's one of the beautiful things about being able to come together in a place like this is that we can be sad, but also be happy that we get to share the memories of those we love. It is a beautiful thing, it really is. Sad week, I fear to lose my best friend. He has been so sad the last year and a half. I'm sad for all of us. I'm poke rapping, all Johnny's doing. Alright, let's continue stories, friends. Stretch and sip. Oh, okay, you got it, Marina. Thank you. Absolutely. We have to cry and weep a little bit so that they know which way to go. They know that they're supposed to go the other way. But then we sing songs and we laugh and we express joy so that they know that they're going the right way and that they've left us behind, not sadder, but happier for having known them. Alright, let's continue.
She is no niece of ours, my lord.
She cried over the outpouring of mirth.
We, Narcissa and I, have never set eyes on our sister since she married that mudblood. This brat has nothing to do with either of us, nor any beast she marries.
What say you, Draco?
Said Voldemort. And though his voice was quiet, it carried clearly through the catcalls and jeers.
Will you babysit the cubs?
The hilarity mounted. Draco looked in terror at his father, who was staring down into his own lap. Then caught his mother's eyes. She shook her head almost imperceptibly, then resumed her own deadpan stare at the opposite wall.
Enough,
said Voldemort, stroking the angry snake.
enough.
And the laughter died at once.
Many of our oldest family trees become a little diseased over time,
he said as Bellatrix gazed at him, breathless and imploring.
You must prune yours, must you not, to keep it healthy? Cut away those parts that threaten the health of the rest.
Yes, yes, my lord,
whispered Bellatrix. Her eyes swam with tears of gratitude again.
at the first chance.
You shall have it,
said Voldemort.
in your family, so in the world. We shall cut away the canker that infects us until only those of true blood remain.
Voldemort raised Lucius's wand, pointed it directly at the slowly revolving figure suspended over the table, gave it a tiny flick, and the figure came to life with a groan and began struggling against invisible bonds.
Do you recognize our guest, Severus?
Asked Voldemort. Snape raised his eyes to the upside-down face. All of the Death Eaters were looking up at the captain now, as though they had been given permission to show curiosity. As she revolved the face in the firelight, the woman said in a cracked and terrified voice,
Severus, help me!
Yes, yes, said Snape as the prisoner turned slowly away again.
And you, Draco?
Asked Voldemort, stroking the snake's snout with his one free hand. Draco shook his head jerkily. Now that the woman had woken, he seemed unable to look at her anymore.
But would you not have taken her classes?
Said Voldemort.
For those of you who do not know, we are joined here tonight by Charity Burbage, who, until recently, taught at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry.
There was small noises of comprehension around the table. A broad, hunched woman with pointed teeth cackled.
Yes, Professor Burbage taught children of witches and wizards all about muggles. How they are not so different from us.
One of the Death Eaters spat on the floor. Charity Burbage revolved to face Snape again.
Severus, please, please.
Silence,
Said Voldemort, with another twitch of Malfoy's wand, and Charity fell silent as if gagged.
Not content with corrupting and polluting the minds of wizarding children. Last week, Professor Burbage wrote an impassioned defense of mudbloods in the Daily Prophet. Wizards, she says, must accept these thieves of their knowledge and magic. The dwindling of purebloods is, says Professor Burbage, a most desirable circumstance. She would have us all mate with muggles, or no doubt, werewolves.
Nobody laughed this time. There was no mistaking the anger and contempt in Voldemort's voice. For the third time, Charity Burbage revolved to face Snape. Tears were pouring from her eyes into her hair. Snape looked back at her, quite impassive, and she turned slowly away from him again.
Avada Kedavra!
The flash of green light illuminated every corner of the room. Charity fell, with a resounding crash, onto the table below, which trembled and creaked. Several of the Death Eaters leapt back in their chairs, and Draco fell out of his onto the floor.
Dinner, Nagini,
Said Voldemort softly, and the great snake swayed and slithered from his shoulders onto the polished wood. And so ends Chapter 1 of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. A hell of a chapter it was, wasn't it? Definitely a bad ending scene. On that logic, Voldy should top himself. That's true. There's not a whole lot of moral consistency amongst monsters, though. As I like the way the books in Seven Waters deals with death, it's lovely. Only the epilogue to edit, Then round two. Excellent, Matty. Excellent. So what do we think, friends? We're about an hour and a half into story time today. Should we do another chapter? Are you all tired? You guys tired? Or you guys are probably too tired for another chapter, right? You guys probably all want to head off to bed and to do other things. all right. We'll do another chapter. Let me pop up and check on the lady very quick. Give me. No, not tired. More snacks to eat. if I must. All right. Let me pop up and check on the lady and stretch my back for a second, and then we will continue. I remember I read this book less than 2 weeks after it came out, and it was only because I took 5 days off from reading it. Castle, I talked to Una until midnight last night. I'm not tired. You should be tired, Matty. Actually, nearly 1 a.m. Another please, I'm still driving. All right, you shall have it. There was talk of rioting earlier, I believe. Hey, Tonks, you made it over to YouTube. What's your thought on how the Harry Potter verse and the Fantastic Beasts merge? I like the first Fantastic Beasts movie. I don't think it's a good movie because it relies far too heavily on prior knowledge of Harry Potter for it to be interesting. But I like the first movie. Everything after the first movie just felt too much. There's a lot of contrivances that had to happen. I do have to get off to bed, but I also vote for another chapter. All right, Beauty and Blasphemy. Beauty and Blasphemy, I don't know if you know, but I leave the reads up for a week after we've done them over on the Tavern YouTube portal. So if you want to be able to catch anything that you miss, you can always go over there for the week afterwards, and they will be the most recent live that is still up over there. Just if you ever want to go and read. One, I like those movies, but they're all over the place. I like the characters. Yeah, I really liked the first movie. I thought it was a really interesting view into the rest of the magical world. But there was just too much stuff going on. Oh, to have that kind of time just to read. I tell the boy all the time, I'm like, you need to take the time right now to do the things and learn the things that you want to learn and do the things that you want to do that are not time wasted, because when you become an adult, you're not going to have the time to learn the things you want to learn and do the things you want to do. So you need to take that time now while you're a child. Because once you're an adult and you have all of these expectations that you're going to place on yourself and that others will place on you, there's just not going to be time for it. Alright friends, give me 5 minutes and I will be back and we will continue on with Harry Potter. We'll do 1 or 2 songs as well, and then we'll continue on with Harry Potter. All right, friends and companions, I have returned. Red is the Rose is the one we typically do. Danny Boy is another one that we do on occasion. Red is the Rose is usually what we do in memory of those who pass. It's what we sung at my mother's wake. So what do you have for me, barkeeps? I still want Don't Forget Your Old Shipmates. I need to do that one, and I need to do Bear just gave me a new one, the Old Dun Cow. I need to learn that one as well. Perfect timing. Did I get back just in time? What do we have, barkeeps, for song requests for the interim here? We'll do 2. So whatever the Danny Boy she knew, Red is the Rose is beautiful. I agree. And at the end, I think I actually Into the West I think would be a beautiful send off. I came back just as you came back. Excellent, Nathan. Excellent. The duck one. Yeah, sure. Why don't we do? We can do Moby Duck as a little bit of a good laugh, and then we'll do an in memoriam song. Because we've had Crystal. I don't know if you were in for it. We've had quite a few people pass away this last week. So Marina asked for Danny Boy. All right. I think we can do Moby Duck, and then we'll do Danny Boy, and then at the end I'll do Red is the Rose, and I think that we'll have the lady come out and do Into the West. So I think Into the West would be a good ending song for tonight. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna mute the music. We'll do Moby Duck. So Moby Duck is a funny song. It's about a guy who retires to a lake after having spent his life on the sea, and then there is a terrifying duck who him and his shipmates on the lake have to take care of. So after 14 years, I left the sea for a life upon a lake. After all the storms I'd seen, I needed a good break. I thought still waters would mean peace for me, but that was a mistake. For the place I chose was bedeviled by a giant evil drake, a mallard of so small as twice the size of any man, a bill to give you nightmares and a monstrous wingspan. You cannot hope to fight it, so avoid him if you can. The terrifying waterfowl, the beast beyond the dam. Row ho, with all your might. Row with harpoons loaded, spoiling for a fight. Row ho, and with any luck, we'll win the day and do away the dreaded Moby Duck. I'm not one for surrender, so a vengeful oath I swore. I gathered up me heart as like so many times before. We shod our ship with weapons and prepared to go to war. To fetid, feathered, fearsome, flying duck will breathe no more. That was a tongue twister. Row ho, with all your might. Row with harpoons loaded, spoiling for a fight. Row ho, and with any luck, we'll win the day and do away the dreaded Moby Duck. There was bonny brave Marie, who to her arms had waved goodbye, and handsome Jack, whose duck attack left him without an eye. The Darby twins, with one leg each, on deck were standing by, on a couple dozen limbs between a crew of 25. Row ho, row with all our might. Row with harpoons loaded, spoiling for a fight. Row ho, and with any luck, we'll win the day and do away the dreaded Moby Duck. The fight raged on for several hours, defend and then attack. With beating from those wicked wings, our boat began to crack. The beast reared up to finish the job, and with a mighty quack, quack, I rammed my harpoon in his throat and made a tasty snack. Row ho, we'll drag his broken body back to wait, hang on. Row ho, row us back to shore. We'll drag his broken body back and roast it on an oar. Row ho, barbecue the beast. With hoisin sauce and pancakes, we'll have the biggest feast. Row ho, row with all our might. We rolled with harpoons loaded, spoiling for the fight. Row ho, we had all the luck. We won the day and did away the dreaded Moby Duck. We won the day and did away the dreaded Moby Duck. Hello! So good to see. I'm glad you dropped in. You're actually just in time for the second chapter. We got one more song, and then we're going to be doing another chapter in stories. I'm so glad that you made it in. Welcome. Love Demon is a friend of one of our longtime Twitch friends who the lady and I have supported for a while, and she's absolutely lovely. So if you're ever looking for some fun and relaxing games, she's well worth a watch. Deeply appreciated. All right, let's do Danny Boy next. We're gonna do. I like the Peter Hollins version of Danny Boy. You've also dropped in when we're doing some memorial songs. We had a few patrons of the tavern had family members pass away, so we're doing a memorial song for them. All right, let me wet the whistle and drop it. That's a live favour to ask. My youngest nephew Alan is doing a readathon for his school. May I please put up a sponsor link? It would be great for him to get the support from all around the world. Certainly, Bear. You're more than welcome to. Hopefully he's not. All cats go to Hades, Matty. All dogs go to heaven, and all cats go to Hades. That's just the reality of it. They like it there. Don't worry. It's nice and warm. They snuggle up. They scratch people. It's where they go for their second run at having work. They do the scratching of people, and then curl up in a warm pile. Where do turtles go then? Nowhere fast. That's for sure, Jared. Nowhere fast. All right. Let us, if anybody would like to support Bear's nephew who's doing a readathon for his school, he's just dropped the link in over on Twitch and over on Facebook, and we love to support young readers. We need more of them, that's for sure. I don't know if it's true, I just made it up, I'm BSing, but it's something we did anyways. All right. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone, and all the flowers are dying. 'Tis you, must go, and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, oh, when the valley's hushed and white with snow, and I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh Danny boy, I love you so. But when you come and all the flowers are dying, if I am dead, as dead I well may be, I pray you find the place where I am lying, and kneel and say an Ave there for me. And I will hear the soft dew tread above me, and oh, my grave will warmer, sweeter be. For you will come and tell me that you love me, and I will sleep in peace until you come to me. I will sleep in peace until you come to me. I love these mournful songs. I don't know why, but I do. There's something in a memory about a sad song, you know. It's about there's no more human feeling than the feeling of loss, I think. The only thing that we can really relate on more than the feeling of loss is the feeling of joy. And there's a certain amount of joy in remembering those that we've lost. So I think that mournful songs sort of embody all of that. We all feel sort of sad together because we know what it feels like to miss somebody and to have someone we love not be there anymore. Whether it's because we no longer see them, or a friend that we just completely lost touch with, or a family member, or someone we care about who's passed. And then to remember those folk is such a happy thing. Such a wonderful, bright thing to remember those who've gone. I love that. You're welcome, Marina, of course. Kind of the opposite for me. Mournful songs are meh for myself. Well, obviously, not everybody's gonna like things. It's definitely far outside your normal venue of music of the poke rap, Wesley. So that's to be expected. Any support for Alan would mean the world to me. Absolutely, Ben. Absolutely. I am sleepy. Good night, Council. Good night, Kayla. I appreciate you for joining us. I hope you rest well. I'm starting second chapter now, so if you want to listen as you fall asleep, Slanche, I'll be heading out now. I'm in dire need of sustenance. Go and eat love. What kind of offerings would you say would be appropriate for lost loved ones? Is there a specific thing? So I don't know if I've brought this up before. The way my family do these things is cultural. When we send family members off, so it's not really religious. There are a lot of religious uh, pagans. My family is more culturally um, on that front. So when we send people off, we remember them by singing songs and saying their names. We have clan songs, and when somebody passes away, their name and story is added in as a verse. And there are some songs that are incredibly long. My grandfather's clan song is very very long, and to the point that we only sing parts of it during festivals. Um, and when we send folk off, we do it not necessarily by leaving offerings, but instead we have festivals of sorts to celebrate those who have passed. and remember their life by telling their stories. So we've never really practiced the offering aspect of things. We've always paid homage and honor to those who have passed. And we do that through remembering them and by celebrating them. And the closest thing you would get to an offering is when you make food for a festival, you make food for an in memoriam. You take the leftover, the blood, the gristle, the bones, and you burn it, and then you take the ash of that and you scatter it in a field or a garden, and that is the way that you give back. You pay homage to those who have passed. Maybe I find I don't understand joy anymore. I often wonder what that feeling was and if I felt it in the past. It is a hard thing to be happy. Sadness is sort of our natural state. I say this all the time. Poverty, nakedness, and despair are sort of the natural state of man. To be prosperous, to be happy, um, to be clothed. These are things we have to work for. These are things we have to work at, and to become somebody who is joyful, who is clothed, and who is satisfied. It takes a lot of work, and we often feel the draw of our natural state pulling us in, and we kind of just want to be in it. And it makes it very hard to seek out the things that satisfy us more because there is a certain comfort in being how we are. And there is an allure to that. Thank you. He was Clan MacDonald and was the one who started me into paganism and to follow my family religion from the old times. The one thing that I will say is you always have to be careful about anything that is marked as a sort of old religion. Um, there are a lot of more modern religions like Wicca and um, Asatru and Wodenism. These are all reconstructionist religions that have come about in the last 150, 200 years as a part of like the Celtic and Nordic revivals. Um, they have semblances of what our ancestors did, but they're not what our ancestors did because we don't know. You really have to rely on family traditions and so on. The reality is that in a lot of places, our families practiced cultural veneration and ancestral veneration as a part of life, not as a preeminence of life, if that makes sense. It was not to a point that it was the thing that dictated how life was lived. It was a part of what was integrated to life as it was lived, if that makes sense. It's not until you get to the Greeks and the Romans that you have more things that are sort of fleshed out in that way. I believe that what you should always vie for in life is satisfaction and stability. Satisfaction and stability are two things that you should always aim for because it is far too easy to try and chase the high of happiness, but consistency, contentment, to be content, and satisfaction, these are things that are very, very important. Hello, Jaeger has arrived, and the maidens be maidening is driving me crazy, as they do. I'll always be annoyed the Celtic and Druid and other religious knowledge was lost because they didn't write it down, record via writing. Well, that's a big part of the problem. It's one of the reasons why I'm grateful to have been brought up in the culture that I was, because our families have been writing down our stories on our backs for generations. So my grandfather's family tradition is handed down from father to son over a very long period of time, and that our family culture though is not typical of that area though. Um, we have a lot of old stories about how other folk outside of our clans and families did things, and it was definitely different. So I don't ever present that as being an alternative to the very little that we know about that time period. if it resonates, songs can also be an offering. Take part in that tradition, taking part in that tradition. Well, and that's normally that's most of what we do is song and stories. Song and stories are the greatest offering you can give in remembrance of the dead, in my opinion. That's what our family does culturally. All right, friends, let us continue. We are on chapter 2. Do we know a lot about Scottish pagan traditions, or is it passed down? Not in mainline academia. So if you take all of the documents that make up, say if you look at Norse paganism is based off of about 3 or 4 dozen documents that make up the Poetic Edda and a few dozen rune stones that have been dug up out of the ground, and then you have the Prose Edda, which was written by Snorri Sturluson, and it's not a religious document. It was a handbook for learning how to write Icelandic poetry, and that's a very important thing. So it's kind of a history book, and it's kind of a mythology book. It's kind of a book about traditional stories, but it's a book that was intended to teach people how to write Icelandic prose. It's like a handbook for poets. The Poetic Edda is more of the independent poems, which is why they differ so much from what goes on in the Prose Edda. The Prose Edda is vastly different story wise from the Poetic Edda, and what you get in the Poetic Edda is much more reflective of what it was, and that's that there was no greater god really in Norse mythology. There was no um, distinguished hierarchy because in different places, different people believe different things. So whereas some villages might have believed that they were the descendants of Odin, some might have believed they were the descendants of Tyr, and in those villages, Tyr was the chief, Odin was the chief, Thor was the chief, Njordr was the chief. So there's this over time bias of certainty that you have to be careful not to fall into when you're looking backwards, because a lot of modern scholars and a lot of modern pseudo theologians of these old religions will try to speak in absolutes, and there just isn't any. When it comes to Scottish, Manx, Pictish, Gaelic, Celtic religions, we know virtually nothing about the religions of those times. We know a lot about the laws and the cultural aspects, and we know that there was a certain veneration of the. See, now I want to call you Gigi, Kitty, because now I'm used to calling you Gigi. But hello, Kitty, good to see you. Um, there's very little record of that time of those things. Um, so most of what we have today is based off of modern academic speculation, more than cultural veracity, and so uh, you just have to be careful with it. I don't have any particular feeling about. I don't. I guess I would need to know what you mean by how do I feel about Christians. The Bible as a book is one of the most academically rigorous books that we have from that time period, and one of the most like verifiable religious texts that you can find, and that's just from objectivity. If you ever want a really interesting read, go and read the Thompson Chain Study Bible. It's fascinating. There's a lot of academic and historical verifiability to that text, and uh, there's a lot of good things in there. Good night, Mary Beth. Happy birthday. I'm so glad that you could join us. Kitty, thank you for the heart me and for the rose. Tips to the Tavern Keeper always appreciated. Yeah, Thompson Chain Study Bible is one of the absolute best reads that you can get. Uh, from what I was taught, it was more warrior based, and we, for my family, say poems in a native language. Yeah, well, and that's the really important thing about like Welsh and Manx and Pictish and Gaels of Ireland is that there is a lot of it was they were warrior cultures. They were very warlike. Tim, hello, buddy. All right, thank you for the tips to the tavern keeper. They are appreciated. I'll check my DMs as soon as we are done with story time tonight, brother. Thank you for the tip. I appreciate it. Um, most of what went on, especially in Ireland and Scotland, we were very heavily warrior culture based. So there was a lot of warring that went on. Um, yeah, I hope that answered your question, Nate. I get a lot of questions about religions. I don't have any particular opinion about religions or religious folk. I think you can believe whatever you want to believe. I tend to try and stick just to the stories and what we know about those stories, and I try to only ever express that outwardly, um, because I'm never one to talk about religion because people tend to get up in arms about religion. Um, but I'm also not going to when people ask me questions about uh, uh, religious stuff. I'll tell you the truth of what I know about the stories from a historical and storyteller's perspective. I know a lot of people have negative feelings about Christians and Christianity because of how they grew up. A lot of people have a lot of grievances against churches because of their parents or because of overzealous churches and whatnot. Um, but when you're just talking about the text itself, the book, it's well worth it to go and read like I said, a Thompson Chain Bible to really get a good idea of like what the Bible actually says, and let that determine how you feel about it. Because there are plenty of people like Henry VIII was a terrible person who started a whole section of church and then did a whole bunch of terrible things in the name of God. It's just like uh, Ragnar Lothbrok killed a lot of people and did a lot of really terrible things in the name of Odin. Now, to be fair, Odin calls for raiding and dying in battle and all those things, but there's no evidence that Ragnar was ever instructed by Odin to do the things that he did. It's just like there are some sects of the Greeks that were very magnanimous. You have the Greeks and the Romans. You have like Socrates, who's one of the greatest thinkers of all time, um, if not the greatest thinker of all time, and Aristotle, and these people who f- built the way that we think. And then you have things um, like Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius is one of the wisest and greatest thinkers of all time, and he was a terrible person. You know, he spent a. It's just like Henry VIII and the Swiss spent a lot of time, butchering the pagans in Wales and in Cornwall. Marcus Aurelius spent a whole lot of time butchering Christians in Rome and Greece, and in Macedonia. So there are these people. You have to be able to separate. You have to be able to look at things in a nuanced way in order to really get the full experience of history and the stories that come from it. There are very few things that are strictly just this was a good person, this was a bad person, this is a good guy, this is a bad guy. There are some, but it's better for you if you can look at history with nuance and be able to understand the context, full context of everything that you read. The amount of AI Jesus we watched with Nana this week was insane. I'm not getting into debates, I promise, but AI Jesus is interesting to watch. I have no idea what AI Jesus is, but I'll give it a look. You can't kill. Well, I don't. I won't say that you can't kill ideas, but it's very hard to kill good principles. Bad principles tend to survive as well, but it's really hard to kill a good principle. When good wisdom and good principles tend to always survive because they work and they are paralleled to human nature. So when you have a good principle like treat others with respect, as long as um, treat others with respect is a principle that is carried throughout a lot of sectors of society, and where that principle lives, you tend to have pretty good society. Um, it's hymns made, but AI made the images, so it's old AI made so he's a little off and he's seeing he looks cross-legged with upside down foot. Oh, I see. I see. Yeah, it's like the Greeks during a good portion of time there was a there were sects of the Greeks who would throw babies into volcanoes during celebrations, and that wasn't very good. And then there was a sect of the Celts who, tossed people into bogs whenever their chieftains died, and then you had different sects of uh, Christianity throughout the years that were led by people like Henry VIII, who more obeyed what Henry VIII was telling them to do than what their teachings told them to do. When will you continue watching Vikings, the one with Ragnar Lothbrok, Floki, and Rolla? Uh, I watched it up to a certain point, but it got to a point where it was more about the drama than it was about the history, and I don't really enjoy drama shows, to be perfectly honest. When something gets to be too dramatic, I lose interest almost entirely. Kitty, thank you for the Deanie holding a hot dog. The teeny Deanie holding a hot dog. Uh, my mom prays to it. Yeah, and this is the thing. A lot of people don't really know what they believe. A lot of people spend most of their time sort of being like falsely virtuous about what they believe. And this is true all the way across the board. Like, this isn't strictly a religious person thing. You get people who are secular. You get people who are atheist. You get people who are agnostic. You get people who are Christian. You get people who are Buddhist. A lot of people spend a lot of time being virtuous about what they believe, rather than practicing what they believe and understanding what they believe. And this is true of like 80% of humanity. There is it's very few people who live principled lives based off of what they believe and in full understanding of what they believe and the ramifications of it. Um, One of the things I always tell young men who come to me for advice is that if you want to live a good life, you need to live a principled life. And you should look for principles that are highly rated, high ranking principles. Things like being good to others and being someone who leads by example and by sacrifice. These are things that lead to higher principled lives, and generally speaking, they make you a better person and they make the people around you. You sort of we learn this thing in the self improvement group in the guild. Um, and that is, when you live a life where you are highly principled, you will lead to what is called ambient abundance, and the people around you will benefit of it. Excuse me, but dude, you're at least missing out on the soundtrack. It's Trevor Morris. He's basically Hans Zimmer for TV. I love all of the music. I actually listen to the soundtrack from Vikings. Again, when something gets to when any show or series gets too dramatic, I usually dip out. It's just what happens. I 100% agree, but mom thinks Obi-Wan is Jesus and it amuses me. Yeah, no, well, and again, like, this is most people do not really understand what it is they believe. Most of the time, we will pick up a belief when we're children, whether that's because you're Christian, your parents were Christian, or because you rebelled against your parents when you were 16, 17, 18 years old, and then you decided you were going to believe a thing. Um, I have met people who pray to the Morrigan as if the Morrigan is a person from Celtic mythology, and she is not. The Morrigan, as I've mentioned in story times before, is a collective like the Norns, like the Voluspa, like the Fates. It's a title, and I've had people come to me and say, "Oh, well, she speaks to me." I'm like, well, I appreciate that for you, but this is like people who say that they hear God, or they hear Odin, or they hear uh, Zeus. This is something that you've picked up and decided that this is what you're going to run with. And I'm not one to tell people what they do and don't do. Maybe they do, but the historical and cultural veracity of it is sort of egregious. Yeah, we are. I'm just waffling now. I got off onto a thing. Damn, don't like Braveheart either. Well, Outlaw King is more accurate. I do like Braveheart because Braveheart is yes, there is some drama to it, but it's drama for drama's sake that I don't care for. Like when it's just drama for drama's sake, that's what bothers me. Yeah, sorry, Tyson. We're going. Yeah, seeing Jesus in pancakes, seeing the Mother Mary in a chicken nugget, like these are forcing the profound into the mundane. When if you really like, if you want to see the beauty of the world, look into the face of a child. Look at the absolutely miraculous sunsets and sunrises. Look at how extraordinarily beautiful a field of wildflowers are. That is where you see divinity. That is where you see the beauty of what is. You don't need to see Jesus in a toast of $1 million, right? I have Zeus waffles. That is horrifying. It is what it is. Um, and Bear, you said I can reduce all the Ten Commandments down to what? The Ten Commandments is a funny thing because it's don't be a prick, and which is essentially what the Ten Commandments say is don't be a prick. I do like anime. I think that I don't like all anime, but there is some of the best stories being told today are being told in anime. I think. We talked about Free Rin Beyond Journey's End a little while back. We were actually watching it on the weekends over in the guild. Free Rin Beyond Journey's End is a beautiful story. And I believe that. And a lot of us don't, or that's another thing, a lot of people are not really good at dealing with their sadness and their traumas. So they impose that or they imprint that upon other things. And nature and all things. Yeah, there's like, if I do. My wife and I both write books. Note to self, don't be a prick. Yeah, that's really the law, right? Watch Outlaw King, pretty please. Send it to me on Instagram so I remember, Tim. I will give it a shot. I give everything a shot. I will give everything one chance. I give everything a fair go. And if it's boring or if it's poorly written, I'll be honest about it. But generally speaking, I give everything one go. I've been binging K-pop Demon Hunters. K-pop Demon Hunters is brilliant. I know I've already made videos about all of this, but if you've never watched K-pop Demon Hunters, go and watch it. It is well worth a while. We might do a watch party on it over in the guild because it's just so good. What setting inspires you, medieval? I do like medieval. I like sort of the futuristic sort of things. I love it. It's great. My granddaughter got me to watch it. Oh, it's so good. Speaking of anime and often soundtracks, has anyone here seen Demon Slayer movie in theaters right now? I have not. Yeah, I enjoy cyberpunk. I enjoy medieval. I enjoy Victorian. My wife and I, we both really love high fantasy. High fantasy is where we both live. We love that. We're actually working on a couple projects right now. We're doing a high fantasy series in a world that I wrote, called Twisted Fates, where I am writing 5 different characters chapters on the different platforms we make stories on. And we're putting out one chapter. You guys get to decide the fate of the character, and then I write the next chapter for that character. And then I'm also working on a book that is inspired by Grimm's fairy tales. Magic systems can make it difficult. If something is overly saturated, it does make it hard to enjoy. Things have to be easy to understand. And I don't mean that like people are dumb. I just mean if you make something overly complex and too hard to approach, it's not fun to read it. If there's a good one with a hard magic system, it's easy. Right, and a lot of people leave their magic systems vague, like you have no idea how this works. And that also kind of makes it hard to get into. I love Seven Deadly Sins. Seven Deadly Sins, the anime, the first season I liked a lot. And then it got very convoluted after that. That sounds awesome. I hope it will be. The wife and I have been working on it for a long time. The film score, I think Tron Legacy and Inception Crossover. That sounds amazing. Like using principles from science and math. I don't want to... I don't want to review... I'm very proud of the magic system. I actually built this system years ago, decades ago. And I'm very proud of it. Your magic system is a soft magic system. magic, because there are not clearly defined rules for it. So it's more of a soft magic system. It has some things that are set in stone, but a lot of it is left up to imagination. The magic system in my world is a hard magic system. It is it is designed. The rules are not immediately apparent because the people of the world don't understand the system uh, in this stage. It's a sort of a fantasy steampunk setting. So here's the deal. I wrote this world when I was 11 years old, and I used to tell my little brother stories in it. And I have 16 novels that are set in a sort of medieval time period in that world. This current time period is 2,000 years after the Twisted Fate story we're writing is 2,000 years after those initial stories that I wrote all those years ago. Now, whether or not I ever publish those books from all those years ago will depend on whether or not people want them. But uh, as it stands in the current era, which is 2,000 years after all of that, it's sort of a little bit more technologically advanced, a little bit more sort of Victorian steampunky with a medieval overlap. So I wanted it to be different enough that it would feel sort of like a different story, but in the ruins of an older world is how we wrote it. Yeah, I have a hard time with soft magic systems because it I don't like the idea that something doesn't have any. I don't like the idea that something has no limits, because that doesn't make sense in the world. I don't find that to be believable. So for me, there needs to be a limit to something, right? Like it seems like trees can grow and grow forever, but eventually they collapse under their own weight. I'd buy them, Castle. I appreciate you, Pear. I I would really only want people to buy them if they enjoyed them. That's the big thing. Um, like shows like Hunter x Hunter and Haki and Chakra ruin my perception of power systems. Yeah, and then you have like Dragon Ball Z where there's no upward movement, like there's no upward limit to the power, and things like One Piece where the power of friendship always prevails. I know you would, Destiny. That's the other thing is we're working on a children's series that teaches children traditional myth and stories as well. That's something that the wife and I are working on. So we're working on one that's based on Grimm's fairy tales. It's a more modern series. We're working on a children's series that follows a little girl and her dragon friend, and then we're working on Twisted Fates. Those are the three that are at the top of our list at the moment. It is amazing. It's my favorite part of the movie, and film scores of the movies are never my favorite part. And I've seen movie 3 times already. Probably go see it again tomorrow. That's a big endorsement, Bethany. It makes me want to go see it. Um, Soft magic tends to be prone to Deus Ex Machina type things, which can detract from the story. I agree, which is why I like for at least I write the hard magic system for me, even if it's never revealed to the reader. I like to have the clearly defined rules for me so that I know what the limits are and I can write within those limits so that it feels more realistic and consistent. I need that like yesterday. I know I'm working on it. So you're always busy. Yes, we're always busy. We also make over 300 short video stories a year. We do 3 of these live storytellings a week. And we also try to do 50 plus longer videos a year, among other child related materials, all of which I'm working on. With your works. Thank you for the follow, Love Star. I appreciate you for that. I presume I'm saying your name correctly, Love Star. I appreciate that, Matty. All right, I've waffled for far too long. Let me get back to these chapters so you guys can get another chapter before bedtime. Kitty, thank you for the bouncing ball over on TikTok. The tips to the tavern keeper are deeply appreciated. If you had degrees for writing, bro, you'd have a bachelor's. I spent 12 years in academia, both teaching and writing stories. I'm also a classically trained storyteller in the traditional Nordic and Celtic ways. My family are all traditional storytellers, with its storyteller tradition going back over 100 generations. And I spent 12 years in academia, and I spent several years writing professionally. And I sort of went away from all of that because I like the purity of storytelling over the academic and corporate aspect of it. Every time I hear waffle, I'm sharing waffle time. I appreciate you, Miru. It's rated R, so I can't say it's in good conscience and anyone under 17 should go and see it. But everyone else should see should for the film score. Thank you, Bethany. I appreciate that. I spent 15 years drawing dragons. That means you spent 15 years drawing magic. My oldest wants to learn all about mythology this year. He wants to start the North American myth and work his way around the world. Destiny, would you like me to start doing videos to help with that? I can throw them into the roster so you have one or two a week that lend themselves to it, at least short ones. Because there's a lot of wonderful myth in North America that never gets explored. Whether you're talking about the Inuits that are from the far north, or I mean, I already have to do 7 videos a week, so it's not a huge deal for me to throw a desired topic in there. Inuit, correct. I actually have a story coming out from an Inuit folklore about hunting wolves. Kitty, thank you for the old awesomes. I appreciate you for it. I spent a couple of months with a group that lives just outside of, spelled Inuit, said Inuit, Igloo people, not nice, Matty, not nice. You're not wrong. I mean, those are the people who live in igloos, but saying igloo people is like calling British people beans on toast people. It's just not very nice. But they have a method for hunting wolves where they would sharpen a blade to razor sharpness. Then they would dip it in blood, let it freeze, then dip it in blood again and let it freeze, and dip it in blood and let it freeze again. And then they would take it out into the ice and the snow, and they would stick it in blade up. And the wolves would smell the blood, and they would come and find it. And they would start licking the blood from the knife. And the coolness of the ice would make their tongue go numb pretty much instantly. And they would keep licking and licking and licking, and then eventually they would taste the fresh surge of blood from their own tongue and think that they were still getting a treat. And they would lick and lick and lick and go into a feeding frenzy, tearing apart their own tongue. And then they would go off into the woods and bleed to death and die. I know you're busy, but it'd be insane to work on a new almost anime-like comic with you and your team because of your expertise. The lady and I would actually like to eventually get to a point where we do animated movies and videos. The lady would like to open an animation studio where we work on games and animes and movies and whatnot. That at least is the goal. Well, and Destiny, to your credit, in English it is pronounced Inuit. In English it is pronounced Inuit, but in the language of the Inuit it's Inuit. So it is not incorrect to say Inuit because that is the English pronunciation of it. But in their language, which is the way you would pronounce it if you are around people of those tribes, you would say Inuit because that is how they pronounce it. The Inuit pronunciation is the English or Latin pronunciation of the word. Inuit is the Inuit pronunciation of it. So it's not incorrect. There's a lot of cultural discussion that goes on around the language, but you just have to remember that the we all are pronouncing things from our own language, so it's not incorrect. It is just not the way that the natives would say it. So you have native pronunciation, and then you have extracurricular pronunciation. So you have to be careful to say that something is incorrect is not academically accurate. Um, but if you want to say it the way that natives would say it, or the natives of that language would say it, that's how they say it. It's something that it gets lost in the weeds a lot when people want to argue about these things. Because it's more that people want to be right than they want to be correct. But you have cultural pronunciations of things. It's just like nobody is going to argue that Japan is not called Japan, but the Japanese don't call Japan Japan. The rest of the world calls Japan Japan, but Japan is not called Japan in Japan. It is called Nippon, because that is what the Japanese people in their language call their country, Nippon. But everywhere else we say Japan. Those things aren't incorrect. But if you were saying, "Oh, the Japanese call Japan," or is it Nihon? I'm sorry, Nihon. You're right. Why did I say Nippon? See, look, that is incorrect. What I said was incorrect. Nihon, correct. I mostly agree until I heard the Swedes pronounce it. The Swedes don't pronounce anything right. Don't. The Swedes and the Finns and the Scandinavians pronounce nothing right. I'm English versus tu es inglés. I think that's the wrong est, but I wanted to use French because in any French is too much for you. That's true. It's true. Greece is kind of well, right, and like Ireland is the ere, right? Ere or eri is what Ireland is called. It's not incorrect to call it Ireland, but the Isle itself is called ere or ire or iri, depending on what dialect you're coming from. If you were to make a manga or comic from scratch, what kind of magic system would you use? It's a great question. Alba. I would. I would do something that was based in an aspect of science that has often been explained through magic, because that's what I did with my own book. Is that I have a an aspect of science. All of it is academically verifiable. All of it is academically sound, scientifically sound, but it utilizes a concept of magic and sort of cross explains. Thank you, Frost. I think I'm just going to run these and then we'll get into reading because I've waffled for far too long. I do apologize for that. I've been off on one all night. We've had a lot of really interesting conversations come up, so I didn't want to skip them, but well, yeah, Alba is Alba Scotland? Hang on. There's a couple of different names for Scotland. Um, because again, like everybody wanted to name the isle. So like there are parts of Scotland that are called Argyll, and sometimes all of Scotland is called Argyll. And then you have Caledonia. Again, like there's sometimes kingdoms called Caledonia. Sometimes all of Scotland is called Caledonia. So there's like this. Kelsey, hello, welcome in. Did I remember right? It's Kelsey, yes. K-Baby's Kelsey. I'm remembering that correctly, I hope. I'm scared to delve into the soft magic because the generic label, but Solo Leveling did it. Solo Leveling did a pretty good job with the way their magic system works, I agree. Excellent, excellent. Argyle Land. Runs away laughing in French. And see, like, my notion is that you should always do your best to understand things from as many perspectives as possible, but don't worry about just understanding things from your prominent perspective. It's like French people love to correct people in the way that they talk, right? If you try to speak French, there's nothing, the only thing that the French hate more than you not speaking their language is you trying to speak their language. If you go to France, the only thing that will make the French hate you more than not speaking their language is you trying to speak their language. And if you get really used to like the culture of like the Parisian culture, generally you can find that the Parisians are very yeah. I hate the imaginary sounds in French. Well, and if you hate the imaginary sounds in French, the Germans love their imaginary sounds. Uh, but anywhere that you go in the world, you can eventually find people who are very kind and who are very very welcoming. But in general, most places you go in the world, people are just so far up their own butts. It's hard to enjoy anything. Uh, they will look at you and pretend not to know English, and if you flop French, it's so stupid. Yeah, yeah. There are lots of places in the world that are like that. I went to Mexico a few years ago. It didn't matter how hard I tried. Nobody, everybody pretended like they couldn't understand. People would be like, huh, huh, huh. Oh, see. I'm like, I said, see. I said that, and you. And it's yeah, it's just it's it's one of those things. But there are some places you go in the world, like if you ever go to like Japan or South Korea, the Japanese and the South Koreans, they love when you try and speak their language. And if you go to the country in Ireland, the country, if you're anywhere where there's a city, like if you go to Belfast or Dublin, people will be exactly the same way. But if you go out to the country, like you go to Wicklow, you go to Kerry, you go to Derry or Donegal, you go to anywhere out there, and you try to speak Gaeilge, and the people in that area still speak it. Limerick's one of the only places, like Limerick and up the coast on the western side. Uh, if you find people who still speak Gaeilge and you try to speak it, they're gonna be absolutely thrilled that you're trying to speak the language. And it's the same thing like Japan. You go to Japan, the Japanese will just be so excited that you tried to speak Japanese, and it could be the most terrible accent. Uh, yeah, Greece is another one. And not all of Italy, but if you go to the country of Italy, like if you go out into the country, the nonnas out in the country in Italy, you speak one Italian word and they're so excited. You're practically a grandson at that point. Uh, like a softer, natural version of being stuck in your ways. Yeah, yeah, precisely that. Uh, German is a hot mess. German also has some of the longest words in existence. So, okay, all right, I've waffled enough. Or Newfoundland, they get a huge kick out of mainlanders who try to speak like them. Well, actively. Well, and it's funny you say that because Newfoundland is Irish folk. Like Newfoundland is an Irish settlement in Canada. Yeah. The Irish have spent so much of history being ignored that if anybody likes or cares, and again, it's mostly country Irish folk. You go to city Irish folk are all they're basically British. But if you and the British hate anybody who tries to tries to get along with them. And again, country British folk aren't like that, but mainland British folk are. I want to get into the Wheel of Time series. Is good, but I'm sure the books are better. I've been told that the books are so monumentally better that if you read the books, the show will make you cry. Is what I've been told. My oldest refused to speak English for 2 years because my BF at the time spoke German at home with his parents. I had to learn German to talk to my own kids. That's a hell of a thing, isn't it? I love newfies. Yeah, newfies are fun. Uh, It's funny though, because if you try to cuss in other languages, like you have to understand that if you go to somewhere like Ireland or Scotland or Australia, I'm gonna swear, but I promise it's for function. Like if you say fuck or you say shite or something in Ireland or Australia or Scotland, those are like punctuation marks in those countries. Those aren't swear words. Like if you go to Germany, you can say all manner of obscenities. You won't offend anybody. But if you call someone a dog or "Du bist ein Schweinen" in German, now you've insulted somebody. That's an actual swear word. TikTok's gonna get mad at me and ban me. Yeah, they're just fluff words. uh, yeah, certain parts of China. I've only been to China superficially. Like I've never been actually into the country. But my grandfather has a lot of friends who are from China and speak Mandarin. And when I visited Hong Kong and when I visited Thailand, and Thailand and Taiwan, I visited with my grandfather when I was very young. A lot of folk there spoke Mandarin, and anybody. I was very young, but I had to learn like basic phrases to go with my grandfather. Uh, we started calling people food names as insults. The newest one is calling somebody mustard because none of us like it. That's very funny. Well, and this the thing is that most places in the world, like swear words, are impolite, but they don't count as insults. But most it's funny because most Western European countries, if you call somebody a rat or a dog or like a vermin, like those are insults. Those are things that'll get people upset at you. Whereas if you say something like if you say a swear word at people like you bastard, like that's not going to upset most people. Obviously, there are exceptions to every rule, but just in general, to specify, Everett was acting like he was on crack over whatever it was. Right? Yeah, TikTok likes to get mad about everything with me. I I tell Everett all the time to insult his friends by like calling them silly, overly appropriate like English names, like calling his friends Whittleworth Togglebottom or something. One of my favorite Newfoundland insults is to call someone a burnout. Yeah, yeah. See, it's like the vast variety in the way that cultural things work are fascinating. I love it. It's beautiful. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's read, friends, because now we're it's so late. I've waffled for so long. Okay, let's continue. We are on chapter 2, In Memoriam. Actually, let me see real quick how many pages this chapter is. Around 14. Oh, it's not a terribly long chapter. Yeah, this chapter is only 9 pages. Yeah, we'll get through this. No problem at all. We'll get through this. But again, it takes a lot to insult a Newfie, and most insults aren't at all. Yeah, well, and that's true. That's true of most Irish folk. Like again, if you're city folk tend to be a little bit more tender, but most Irish folk, most Scottish folk, you have a hard time insulting them. Same thing with like most people from the country. It's really hard to insult them. It's the same thing out here in the United States. Like you can go to any of the good old boy places, and it's really hard to insult people. Of course, you do have people in certain areas who will still get upset, but it's very difficult to do. In my book, they say by Odin's beard or by Thor's hammer. Yeah, that's how they do it. Is that the right way for them? Yeah, that's not incorrect. There is a sect of Nordic people who would have affirmed that way. So it's not there's not a whole lot of historical veracity to it, but there is definitely point that it has and could have and would have been said. The tiniest had a nightmare and has taken over my bed. I'm gonna have to dip out. That's all right, Destiny. Uh, Go ahead and head out. We're probably gonna be on for about 30 more minutes to get through this chapter. I'm gonna go head down. I'm just gonna read through, and then we'll be done. Memphis guy does something every other place. How dare you? All right, rest well. Give the boys smooches and snuggles from us, as well as passed on to Lucas. All right, Chapter 2 of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hollows. In Memoriam. Harry was bleeding, clutching his right hand with his left, and swearing under his breath. He shouldered open his bedroom door, and there was a crunch of breaking china. He had trodden on a cup of cold tea that had been sitting on the floor outside his bedroom. What the? He looked around the landing of number 4 Privet Drive. It was deserted. Possibly the cup of tea was Dudley's idea of a clever booby trap. Keeping his bleeding hand elevated, Harry scraped the fragments of the cup together with the other hand and drew them into an already crammed bin just visible inside of his bedroom. Then he tramped across to the bathroom to run his finger under the cold tap. It was stupid, pointless, irritating beyond belief that he still had 4 days left of being unable to perform magic. But he had to admit to himself that this jagged cut in his finger would. But he had to admit to himself that this jagged cut in his finger would have defeated him. He had never learned how to repair wounds, and now, come to think of it, particularly in light of his immediate plans, this seemed a serious flaw in his medical education. Making a mental note to ask Hermione how it was done, he used a large wad of toilet paper to mop up as much of the tea as he could before returning to his bedroom and slamming the door behind him. Harry had spent the morning completely emptying his school trunk for the first time since he had packed it 6 years ago. At the start of the intervening school years, he had merely skimmed off the topmost 3/4 of the contents and replaced or updated them, leaving a layer of general debris at the bottom. Old quills, desiccated beetle eyes, single socks that no longer fit. Minutes previously, Harry had plunged his hand into this mulch, experiencing a stabbing pain in his fourth finger on his right hand, and withdrawn it to see a lot of blood. He now proceeded a little more cautiously, kneeling down beside the trunk. Again he groped around at the bottom, and after retrieving an old badge that flickered feebly between support diggory and Potter Stinks, a cracked and worn-out sneakoscope, and a gold locket inside which a note signed R.A.B. had been hidden, he finally discovered the sharp edge that had done the damage. He recognized it at once. It was a 2-inch long fragment of the enchanted mirror his dead godfather, Sirius, had given him. Harry laid it aside and felt cautiously around the trunk for the rest. But nothing more remained of his godfather's last gift except powdered glass, which clung to the deepest layers of debris like glittering grit. He sat up and examined the jagged piece on which he had cut himself, seeing nothing but his own bright green eye reflected back at him. Then he placed the fragment on top of the morning's Daily Prophet, which lay unread on the bed, and attempted to stem the sudden upsurge of bitter memories. The stab of regret and longing of the discovery of the broken mirror had occasioned by attacking the rest of the rubbish in his trunk. It took another hour to empty it completely, to throw away the useless items and sort the remainder into piles according to whether or not he needed them. From now on, his school and Quidditch robes, cauldron, parchment, quills, and most of his textbooks were piled in a corner to be left behind. He wondered what his aunt and uncle would do with them. Burn them in the dead of night, probably, as if they were evidence of some dreadful crime. His muggle clothing, invisible cloak, potion-making kit, certain books, the photograph album Hagrid had once given him, a stack of letters, and his wand had been repacked into a rucksack. In the front pocket were the Marauder's map and the locket of a note signed R.A.B. inside it. The locket was accorded this place of honor not because it was valuable, in the usual sense it was worthless, but because of what it had cost to attain it. This left a sizable stack of newspapers sitting on his desk beside his snowy owl, Hedwig, one for each of the days Harry had spent at Privet Drive this summer. He got up off the floor, stretched, and moved across to his desk. Hedwig made no movement as he began to flick through the newspapers, throwing them into the rubbish pile, one by one. The owl was asleep, or else faking. She was angry with Harry about the limited amount of time she was allowed out of her cage at the moment. As he neared the bottom of the pile of newspapers, Harry slowed down, and one particular issue that he knew had arrived shortly after he returned to Privet Drive for the summer. He remembered that there had been a small mention on the front about the resignation of Charity Burbage, the Muggle Studies teacher at Hogwarts. At last he found it. Turning to page 10, he sank at the desk chair and reread the article he had been looking for. Albus Dumbledore remembered, by Elphias Doge. I met Albus Dumbledore at the age of 11 on our first day at Hogwarts. Our mutual attraction was undoubtedly due to the fact that we both ourselves were outsiders. I had contracted dragonpox shortly before arriving at school, and while I was no longer contagious, my pockmarked visage and greenish hue did not encourage many to approach me. For his part, Albus had arrived at Hogwarts under the burden of unwanted notoriety. Scarcely a year previously, his father, Percival, had been convicted of a savage and well-publicized attack on 3 young muggles. Albus had never attempted to deny that his father, who was to die in Azkaban, had committed this crime. On the contrary, when I plucked up the courage to ask him, he assured me that he knew his father to be guilty. Beyond that, Dumbledore refused to speak of the sad business, though many attempted to make him do so. Some indeed were disposed to praise his father's actions, and assumed that Albus too was a Muggle-hater. They could not be more mistaken. As anyone who knew Albus would attest, he never revealed the remotest anti-Muggle tendencies. Indeed, his determined support for Muggle rights gained him many enemies in subsequent years. In a matter of months, however, Albus's own fame had begun to eclipse that of his father. By the end of his first year, he would never again be known as the son of a Muggle-hater, but as nothing more or less than the most brilliant student ever seen at the school. Those of us who were privileged to be his friends benefited from his example, not to mention his help and encouragement, with which he was always generous. He confessed to me in later life that he knew even then that his greatest pleasure lay in teaching. He not only won every prize of note that the school offered, he was soon in regular correspondence with the most notable magical names of the day, such as and including Nicholas Flamel, celebrated alchemist, Bethesda Bagshot, the noted historian, and Albert Waffling, the magic theocratician. Several of his papers found their way into learned publications such as Transfiguration Today, Challenges in Charming, and The Practical Potioneer. Dumbledore's future career seemed likely to be meteoric, and the only question that remained of when would he become Minister of Magic, though it was often predicted in later years that he was the point of taking the job. However, he never had ministerial ambitions. 3 years after he had started at Hogwarts, Albus's brother, Aberforth, arrived at school. They were not alike. Aberforth was never bookish, and unlike Albus, preferred to settle arguments by dueling rather than through reasoned discussion. However, it is quite wrong to suggest, as some have, that the brothers were not friends. They rubbed along as comfortably as 2 such different boys could do. In fairness to Aberforth, it must be admitted that living in Albus's shadow cannot have been an altogether comfortable experience. Being continually outshone was an occupational hazard of being friends, but was being his friend, and cannot have been any more pleasurable as a brother. When Albus and I left Hogwarts, we intended to take the then traditional tour of the world together, visiting and observing foreign wizards before pursuing our separate careers. However, tragedy intervened. On the very eve of our trip, Albus's mother, Kendra, died, leaving Albus the head and sole breadwinner of the family. I postponed my departure long enough to pay respects at Kendra's funeral, then left for what was now to be a solitary journey.
With a younger brother and sister to care for, and little gold left to them, there could be no longer any question of Albus accompanying me. That was the period of our lives when we had the least contact. I wrote Albus, describing, perhaps insensitively, the wonders of my journey, from narrow escapes from chimeras in Greece to the experiments of the Egyptian alchemists. His letters told me little of his day-to-day life, which I guessed to be frustratingly dull for such a brilliant wizard. Immersed in my own experiences, it was the horror that I heard toward the end of my year's travels that yet another tragedy struck Dumbledore. The death of his sister, Ariana. Though Ariana had been in poor health for a long time, the blow coming so soon after the loss of their mother had a profound effect on both of her brothers, all the closest to Albus, and I count myself one of that lucky number, agree that Ariana's death and Albus's feelings of personal responsibility for it, though of course he was guiltless, left their mark upon him forevermore. I returned home to find a young man who had experienced a much older person's suffering. Albus was far more reserved than before, and much less light-hearted. To add to his misery and loss of Ariana had led, not to a renewal of closeness between Albus and Aberforth, but to an estrangement. In time, this would lift, and years later they re-established, if not a close relationship, then certainly a cordial one. However, he rarely spoke of his parents, or of Ariana from then on, and his friends learned not to mention them. Other quills will describe the triumphs of the following years of Dumbledore's innumerable contributions to the wizarding knowledge, including his discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, which will benefit generations to come, as will the wisdom he displayed in his many judgments when he made while chief warlock of the Wisengamot. They say still that no wizarding duel ever matched that between Dumbledore and Grindelwald in 1945. Those who witnessed it have written of the terror and the awe that they felt watching these two extraordinary wizards do battle. Dumbledore's triumph and the consequences for the wizarding world are considered to be a turning point in magical history, to match the introduction of the International Statute of Secrecy or the downfall of he who must not be named. Albus Dumbledore was never proud or vain. He could find something to value in anyone, however apparently insignificant or wretched. And I believe that his early losses endowed him with great humanity and sympathy. I shall miss his friendship more than I can say, but my loss is as nothing compared to the wizarding world's. That he was the most inspiring and best loved of all Hogwarts headmasters cannot be in question. He died as he lived, working always for the greater good and, to his last hour, willing to stretch out a hand to a small boy with dragonpox, as he was on the day that I met him.
Marina, again, thank you for the bits. I appreciate you very much. Thank you kindly, love. It is deeply appreciated. Tips to the tavern keeper are always appreciated. Oh, Marisol, I'm so sorry. I didn't see your earlier comment. You said I'm reading a new fantasy series that is starting to turn into Pokemon. It's so weird. Book 1 is called Sufficiently Advanced Magic. Interesting. Very interesting. It's baffling, though. I'd expect the page count to go down. Castle, how does revision get me more pages? Well, sometimes you realize that you need more details. It's usually the third or fourth round of editing that you start cutting out information. Jonas, thank you for the follow. You've marked us on your map now. You should be able to find your way back the very next time that you seek a story. I hope you're enjoying yourself, and I hope that you will come back and join us again. We do story time Tuesday and Thursday with me, and then the Lady of the Tavern does story time on Sundays. And then if you are interested in myth and lore and tales of yore, you can always find more stories that we've put out on writing and storytelling and so on over on YouTube and any other platform that we put out the stories through, if you are so inclined. Harry finished reading, but continued to gaze at the picture accompanying the obituary. Dumbledore was wearing his familiar kindly smile, but as he peered over the top of his half-moon spectacles, he gave the impression, even in newsprint, of X-raying Harry, whose sadness mingled with a sense of humiliation. He had thought he knew Dumbledore quite well, but ever since reading this obituary, he had been forced to recognize that he had barely known him at all. Never once had he imagined the Dumbledore's childhood or youth. It was as though he had sprung into being as Harry had known him, venerable and silver-haired and old. The idea of a teenage Dumbledore was simply odd, like trying to imagine a stupid Hermione or a friendly Blasted Scroot. He had never thought to ask Dumbledore about his past. No doubt it would have felt strange and pertinent even, but after all, it had been common knowledge that Dumbledore had taken part in that legendary duel with Grindelwald, and Harry had not thought to ask Dumbledore what that had been like, nor about any of his other famous achievements. No, they had always discussed Harry, Harry's past, Harry's future, Harry's plans, and it seemed to Harry now that despite the fact that his future was so dangerous and so uncertain, that he had missed irreplaceable opportunities when he had failed to ask Dumbledore more about himself, even though the only personal questions he had ever asked his headmaster was also the only one he suspected Dumbledore had not answered honestly. By the way, this is an excellent point of advice. If you have people in your life, regardless of how old or young they are, ask them about themselves. Ask them about their experiences, especially if they have miraculous ones. Ask your friends, ask your family members about the things they've experienced and the things that they're good at. Because those things, once they're gone, they're gone. The Dragon's Rest Tavern. Oh, snap, is a fellow Dragon Tavern. Hello, my friend. Thank you for the follow. You've now marked this on your map, and you should be able to find your way back again the next time you seek a story. I am Castle. This is my tavern. Here we talk about myth and lore and tales of yore. And every now and again, I read you all a bedtime story. This is a tavern at the end of the world where all stories eventually come to rest. And you have stumbled through one of the portals because you were seeking a story. And we're glad to have you. Grab a seat, fill a tankard, and enjoy. We are about halfway through chapter 2 of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Although I'm realizing on TikTok you can't really see that. I need to lower it down, I suppose. A little bit too high up. What do you see when you look in the mirror?
I see myself holding a pair of thick woolen socks.
After several minutes of thought, Harry tore the obituary out of the prophet, folded it carefully, and tucked it inside the first volume of Practical Defense Magic and its use against the dark arts. Then he threw the rest of the newspaper into the rubbish pile, and turned to face the room. It was much tidier. The only thing he had left out of place was today's daily prophet, still lying on the bed, and on top of it, the piece of broken mirror. Harry moved across the room, slid the mirror fragment off of today's prophet, and unfolded the newspaper. He had merely glanced at the headline when he had taken the rolled-up paper from the delivery owl earlier that morning, and had thrown it aside, after noting that it said nothing about Voldemort. Harry was sure the Ministry was leaning on the prophet to suppress the news about Voldemort. It was only now, therefore, that he saw what he had missed. Across the bottom half of the front page, a smaller headline was set over a picture of Dumbledore striding along, looking harried. This guy should have been cast recording Audible is releasing. Thank you kindly, my friend. Appreciate the compliment.
Dumbledore, truth at last. Coming next week, the shocking story of the flawed genius considered by many to be the greatest wizard of his generation, Stripped away the popular image of the serene, silver-bearded wisdom, Rita Skeeter reveals a disturbed childhood, the lawless youth, lifelong feuds, and the guilty secrets Dumbledore carried with him to his grave. Why was the man tipped to be Minister of Magic, content to remain a mere headmaster? What was the real purpose of the secret organization known as the Order of the Phoenix, and how did Dumbledore really meet his end? The answer to these and many other questions are explored in the explosive new biography, The Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore, by Rita Skeeter, exclusively interviewed by Betty Bathwaite. Page 13, inside.
Harry ripped open the newspaper and found page 13. The article was topped with a picture showing another familiar face. A woman wearing jeweled glasses with elaborately curled blonde hair, her teeth bared in what was clearly supposed to be a winning smile, wiggling her fingers up at him, doing his best to ignore the nauseating image. Harry read on.
In person, Rita Skeeter is much warmer and softer than her famously ferocious quill portraits might suggest. Greeting me in the hallway of her cozy home, she leads me straight into the kitchen for a cup of tea, a slice of pound cake, and, it goes without saying, a steaming vat of the freshest gossip. Well, of course, Dumbledore is a biographer's dream, says Skeeter. Such a long and full life. I'm sure my book will be the first of very, very many. Skeeter was certainly quick off the mark. Her 900-page book was completed a mere 4 weeks after Dumbledore's mysterious death in June. I asked her how she managed this super-fast feat. Oh, when you've been a journalist for as long as I have, working to a deadline is second nature. I knew the wizarding world was clamoring for the full story, and I wanted to be the first to meet that need. I mentioned the recent, widely publicized remarks of Ephias Doge, special advisor to the Wisengamot and long-standing friend of Albus Dumbledore, that Skeeter's book contains less fact than a chocolate frog card. Skeeter throws back her head and laughs. Darling Dodgy, I remember interviewing him a few years back about the mer people, rights blessed. Completely gaga, seemed to think that we were sitting at the bottom of Lank Windermere. Kept telling me to watch out for trout. And yet, Ephias Doge's accusation of inaccuracy have been echoed in many places. Does Skeeter really feel that 4 short weeks is enough to gain the full picture of Dumbledore's long, extraordinary life? Oh, my dear, beamed Skeeter, rapping me affectionately across the knuckles. You know as well as I do that much information can be generated by a fat bag of galleons. A refusal to hear the word no, and a nice sharp quick quotes quill. People were queuing to dish the dirt on Dumbledore anyway. Not everyone thought he was so wonderful, you know. He trod on an awful lot of important toes, but old Dodgy Doge can get off his high hippogriff, because I have had access to a source most journalists would swap their wands for. One who has never spoken publicly before, and who was close to Dumbledore during most of his turbulent and disturbing phase of his youth. The advanced publicity of Skeeter's biography has certainly suggested that there will be shocks in store for those who believe Dumbledore to have led a blameless life. What were the biggest surprises she uncovered? I asked. Now, come off it, Betty. I am not going to give away the highlights before anybody's bought the book, laughed Skeeter. But I can promise that anybody who still thinks Dumbledore was as white as his beard is in for a rude awakening. They just say that nobody's hearing him rage against you-know-who would have dreamed that he would dabble in the dark arts himself in his youth. And for a wizard who spent his latter years pledging for tolerance, he wasn't exactly broad-minded when he was younger. Yes, Albus Dumbledore had an extremely murky past, not to mention the very fishy family which he worked so hard to keep hushed. I asked Skeeter whether referring to Dumbledore's brother, Aberforth, whose conviction by the Wisengamot for misuse of magic caused a minor scandal 15 years ago. Oh, Aberforth is just the tip of the dung heap, laughed Skeeter. No. I'm talking about much, much worse than a brother's fondness for fiddling with goats Worse even than a muggle maiming father. Dumbledore couldn't keep either of them quiet anyway. They were both charged by the Wisengamot. No, it's the mother and sister that intrigued me, and with a little digging uncovered a positive nest of nastiness. But as I say, you'll have to wait for chapters 9 and 12 for full details. All I can say now is no wonder Dumbledore never talked about how his nose got broken. Family skeletons notwithstanding, does Skeeter deny the brilliance that led to Dumbledore's many magical discoveries? He had brains, she concedes, although many now question whether he could really take full credit for all his supposed achievements. As I reveal in Chapter 6, Ivory Dillinsby claims to have already discovered 8 uses for dragon's blood when Dumbledore borrowed his papers. But the importance of some of Dumbledore's achievements cannot, I venture, be denied. What of his famous defeat of Grindelwald? Oh, now I'm glad you mentioned Grindelwald, says Skeeter with a tantalizing smile. I'm afraid those who got dewy-eyed over Dumbledore's spectacular victory must brace for a bombshell, or perhaps a dung bomb. Very dirty business indeed. All I'll say is, don't be so sure that there really was a spectacular duel of legend. After they read my book, people may be forced to conclude that Grindelwald simply conjured a white handkerchief from the end of his wand and came quietly. Skeeter refused to give any more away on this intriguing subject, so we turn instead to the relationship that will undoubtedly fascinate her readers more than any other. Oh, yes, says Skeeter, nodding briskly. I devote an entire chapter to the whole Potter-Dumbledore relationship. It's been called unhealthy and even sinister. Again, your readers will have to buy my book for the whole story. But there is no question that Dumbledore took an unnatural interest in Potter from the word go. Whether that was really the boy's best interest, well, we'll see. In a certain open secret that Potter has had the most troubled adolescence. I asked whether Skeeter is still in touch with Harry Potter, whom she so famously interviewed last year. A breakthrough piece in which Potter spoke exclusively of his conviction that you-know-who had returned. Oh, yes, we've developed a close bond, says Skeeter. Poor Potter has few real friends, and we met at one of the most testing moments in his life, the Triwizard Tournament. I am probably one of the only people alive who can say they know the real Harry Potter. Which leads us neatly to the many rumors still circulating that Dumbledore's final hours. Does Skeeter believe that Harry Potter was there when Dumbledore died? Well, I don't want to say too much. It's all in the book. But eyewitnesses inside Hogwarts Castle saw Potter running away from the scene moments after Dumbledore fell, jumped or was pushed. Potter later gave evidence against Severus Snape, a man against whom he has a notorious grudge. Is everything as it seems? That is for the wizarding community to decide once they've read my book. On that intriguing note, I take my leave. There can be no doubt that Skeeter has quilled an instant bestseller. Dumbledore's legions of admirers, meanwhile, may well be trembling at what they soon emerge about their hero.
Harry reached the bottom of the article, but continued to stare blankly at the page. Revulsion and fury rose in him like vomit. He balled up the newspaper and threw it, with all the force he could manage at the wall, where it joined the rest of the rubbish heap around his overflowing bin. He began to stride blindly around the room, opening empty drawers, picking up books, only to replace them on the same piles, barely conscious of what he was doing. As random phrases from Rita's article echoed in his head, an entire chapter on the whole Potter-Dumbledore relationship. It's been called unhealthy, even sinister. He dabbled in the dark arts himself in his youth. I've had access to a source most journalists would swap their wands for. Lies! Harry bellowed, and through the window he saw the next-door neighbor, who had paused to restart his lawnmower, look up nervously. Harry sat down hard on the bed. The broken bit of mirror danced away from him. He picked it up and turned it over in his fingers, thinking of Dumbledore and the lies with which Rita Skeeter was defaming him. A flash of bright blue. Harry froze. His cut fingers slipped on the jagged edge of the mirror again. He had imagined it. He must have done. He glanced over his shoulder. The wall was sickly peach color of Aunt Petunia's choosing. There was nothing blue there for the mirror to reflect. He peered into the mirror fragment again. saw nothing but his own bright green eye looking back at him. He had imagined it. There was no other explanation. Imagined it. Because he had been thinking of his dead headmaster. If anything was certain, it was that the bright blue eyes of Albus Dumbledore would never pierce him again. And so ends chapter 2 of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, my friends. And we're almost precisely right on time for when we normally would want to end up. Let's go. So we are going to do 2 songs for here at the end. For anyone who's new, in between chapters and at the end of Storytime, we sing ballads and shanties. We don't sing them well. We sing them to have fun. And we will be singing Red is the Rose in remembrance of those who were lost. And I'll have the lady come out and sing Into the West. So let's go ahead and do Red is the Rose first. Marina, thank you for the bits, love. I appreciate you. So kind and so generous. It's deeply appreciated. Tips to the tavern keeper are always appreciated. All right, let's do Red is the Rose. I just realized I didn't have the music going. What a doofus I am. Cheers, Frost. Thank you for keeping up the bar for us. It is appreciated. Belinda, so what are your thoughts on the book so far? I am so far. It's off on a roller coaster. There's a whole lot going on, a lot more than typically happens in the first chapter of a Harry Potter book, but it is intriguing. Now, of course, I already know how the book ends. I already know how everything ends, but so far we're off to a nice pacing. All right. Come over the hills, my bonny Irish lass. Come over the hills to your darling. You choose the road, love, and I'll make the vow. And I'll be your true love forever. Red is the rose that in yonder garden grows. Fair is the lily of the valley. Clear is the water that flows from the Boyne. But my love is fairer than any. 'Twas down by Killarney's green woods that we strayed, when the moon and the stars, they were shining. The moon had shone its rays on her locks of golden hair, and she swore she'd be my love forever. Red is the rose that in yonder garden grows. Fair is the lily of the valley. Clear is the water that flows from the Boyne. But my love is fairer than any. It's not for the parting that my sister pains. It's not for the grief of my mother. It's all for the loss of my bonny Irish lass, that my heart is breaking forever. Red is the rose that in yonder garden grows. Fair is the lily of the valley. Clear is the water that flows from the Boyne. But my love is fairer than any. Oh, my love is fairer than any. Oh, the only thing I need to say, when I send the PDF of the edited version of the story, there's still some things I need to go back and fix. Some are minor, some are revolving around Kali, possibly two of my antagonists. The stuff I did with the goddesses needs seeds, etc. Just so you're aware, some of the edits came after I was like, oh, this makes more sense. I'll do this in the middle of editing. That's alright. That's alright, Matty. No big deal. Alright, let me go grab the lady and have her come out and sing you all into the west before I send you all off to bed. I bring good tidings of a lovely lady. I'm going to give you the lyrics here.
Sure.
There's actually quite a few folk in here who are new, and this will be their first time hearing you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we had quite a few new folk join us tonight.
Well, it's gonna be really bad. My voice is crappy right now.
Alright, if we scare them off, it's meant to be.
Okay. Alright. Are we ready?
Ready.
Lay down your sweet and weary head. Night is falling.
Come here. Lay down. Come here. Sluts. Sluts. Lay down. Leave me alone. Sluts. Been a pain in the butt. Okay. Resume.
You have come to journey's end. Sleep now and dream of the ones who came before. They are calling from across the distance. I'll decide to make noise right now. From across the distant shore, why do you weep? What are these tears upon your face? Soon you will see. All of your fears will pass away, safe in my arms. You're only sleeping. What can you see on the horizon? Why do the white gulls call across the sea? A pale moon rises. The ships have come to carry you home. And all will turn to silver glass. A light on the water, all souls pass. Hope fades into the world of night, through shadows falling out of memory and time. Don't say we have come now to the end. White shores are calling. You and I will meet again, and you'll be here in my arms, just sleeping. What can you see on the horizon? Why do the white gulls call across the sea? A pale moon rises. The ships have come to carry you home. And all will turn to silver glass. A light on the water, great ships pass into the west.
Thank you, Goldberry. I mean, my darling.
Goldberry. I could never.
I mean, it's I'm the
quirky guy.
the quirky, insane guy who raises talking horses, and
Did I finish my breakfast today?
she didn't. She did not. She did not. As a matter of fact.
Stop outing me, Maddie.
Naughty, naughty, naughty. Whoopins. I actually do have to make her some more food, though. Stephanie also says beautiful.
Thank you.
See, even when you're not at your best, I'm probably blowing people's eardrums out. Hang on. Even when you're not at your best, you're still doing spectacular work. Christy, I don't know if I acknowledged you when you dropped in, but hello. She is my Goldberry. That's why I can't be distracted for too long, because Goldberry is waiting. Talking with me last night, just picking your breakfast. Yeah, sometimes I'll take her breakfast, and I'll come out to get her coffee, and then by the time I go back in and the breakfast is gone. But like 80% of the time, I'll be going in 8 hours later, and she's like half finished with what I brought her for breakfast. Belinda says it was lovely. Thank you for singing to us.
You're welcome.
All right, friends. If you are joining us through any of the portals except for Twitch, this is where Storytime ends for tonight. I appreciate you all for joining us. Marina, thank you so much for your generosity tonight. Tipped 2,100 bits this evening.
Wow.
Absolutely incredibly generous. And to everyone who gave tonight, thank you so much for your tips to the Tavern Keepers. It means the world. And for all of you who joined us and had fun and spent your night and evening or afternoon or morning with us, it absolutely means everything to the lady and I. It is wonderful to have you. Teresa says, goodbye, everyone. The lady has a beautiful voice. Yes, she does.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, friends and companions, this is where we part this evening, and while it is sad, such sweet sorrow to part, the tavern will open again when more stories are ready to be sought. Oh,
Show them how big the baby is.
yeah, look how big dude is. Look how big this guy is. And Milo, look how huge he is. He's massive. No, don't look that way. Look that way. Look how big this guy is. He's doubled in size since we got him. He's so big. He's a monster.
It's like, why have you betrayed me?
Oh, you want to go back to mom?
I got you.
He's huge. So I would go so far as to drop the entire H. He's huge.
He's only 6 months.
He's only 6 months old. He's going to get a lot bigger than that. You rode with me to the end. Spectacular, Marina. That is good news. All right, friends and companions, I will bid you all good night. And until we next gather here in the tavern, stay bloodthirsty, my friends. And I will see you next time.